Chapter 954. After listening to Hai Wei's story, Shouchen suddenly laughed hysterically and said, "You Qianqiu, oh you Qianqiu. You Qianqiu, you really don't give up on killing me. You're actually on guard against me to such an extent. Are you afraid of me? Are you afraid of me? Haha." It turned out that during the battle at Lingfang Valley, Yan Juixing's death had provoked Yu Qianqiu's deep fear. However, after using all his forces to search the entire cultivation world, he couldn't find any traces of Yan Juixing at all. Yu Qianqiu couldn't figure out whether Yan Juixing was dead or not because the demonic technique was too evil. Coupled with the disappearance of Man Hu and the others from Snowy Mountain, Yu Qianqiu immediately felt a huge knot in his heart. Yu Qianqiu had a strong feeling that this matter was definitely not over. But he really couldn't find Yan Juixing. He couldn't give up eating for fear of choking, and do nothing for Yan Juixing. In the end, after repeatedly thinking about it, he came to a conclusion. Yan Juixing was already hated by everyone in the cultivation world. Most people wouldn't dare to help him unless they wanted to die. As a result, 10,000 demons, and Baihua Palace immediately became his main suspects. This was because Yan Wuchen of 10,000 demons was Yan Juixing's grandfather, and Baihua Fairy of Baihua Palace was Yan Juixing's mother. In the entire cultivation world, if there were people who would dare to risk their lives to help Yan Juixing, it would definitely be these two. After thinking about it, in order not to make too much noise and alert the enemy, Yu Qianqiu sent out his more reliable confidants, and had Hai Wei and Mo Xiaojun keep watch outside of 10,000 demons. They would keep an eye on the back of the mountain where Yan Wuchen lived. If they found any suspicious people or things, the two of them would immediately inform the Hong Gang and Qing Gang. Hong Qi and Gu Qingyuan would immediately use all their power to thoroughly investigate the clues. As long as there was a little evidence that the 10,000 demons were related to Yan Juixing, Yu Qianqiu would mercilessly launch a devastating attack on the 10,000 demons. He would find Yan Juixing even if he had to scrape the ground. Similarly, Yu Qianqiu didn't let the Flower Palace off either, and he sent Amano and Li Qiuxiang to monitor them in secret. Not many people knew about this. Other than Yu Qianqiu, there were only these four people, Hong Qi and Gu Qingyuan. Originally, Yu Qianqiu wanted to directly destroy the 10,000 demons and the Flower Palace, so that Yan Juixing would have nowhere to hide. However, considering that the demonic art was too strange, he wasn't very confident that he would be able to find Yan Juixing, so he left these two sects as bait. He didn't believe that Yan Juixing could rise again without any support, so he had to find a trustworthy foothold. It could be said that leaving these two sects was to not waste a lot of manpower and resources to search blindly. This kind of setup had to be said to be far-sighted, and he had accidentally encountered it. Yan Juixing didn't even know what was going on. He really resurrected with Yan Wuchen of the 10,000 demons. However, things were always unpredictable. Hai Wei didn't think that Yan Juixing's cultivation level had already reached the soul formation late stage. He was immediately discovered by Yan Juixing as soon as he revealed a bit of information. Yan Juixing immediately figured out the ins and outs of the matter with the power of his magic eye. "You're saying that there are two more people watching the Flower Palace?" Shouchen asked in a deep voice. "Yes," Hai Wei replied respectfully. Shouchen immediately gritted his teeth. While he hated them, he couldn't help but admire Yu Qianqiu. He had come out this time to go to the Flower Palace, but he didn't expect that he had already fallen into Yu Qianqiu's trap. This guy was really terrifying. If he didn't get rid of him as soon as possible, it would be a huge problem. If he hadn't accidentally discovered Hai Wei, he would definitely have rashly barged into the Flower Palace, because he had changed his appearance. "Where's the other guy who's watching over the 10,000 demons with you?" Shouchen shouted. Hai Wei pointed into the distance and said, "Young Lord Mo is over there. He and I are each watching an area that people rarely pass by." Yu Qianqiu said that most people who do sneaky things don't dare to do it openly. They can only sneakily take small paths. "Anyone that we meet is suspicious. Don't let any of them go. We have to investigate them thoroughly." That be asterisk starred is talking about himself, right? Shouchen was furious. He didn't expect that he would be angered by Yu Qianqiu before he even saw Yu Qianqiu. He suddenly had a thought that he might have a bad start again. He immediately became vigilant. He felt that this guy was too scary. He had to be more careful this time. After calming himself down, he asked indifferently, "Do you know where Yu Qianqiu is now?" "I don't know. I haven't seen him for a long time. If anything happens, I directly inform the people from the Green Gang and Hong Gang," Highway replied. "Hee. The Green Gang and Hong Gang are Yu Qianqiu's lackeys." Shouchen suddenly looked into the distance and sneered. "Yu Qianqiu, it's time for us to have a showdown. What you've given me, I'll give it back to you 10 times, 100 times more. Continue to monitor here. Pretend that you've never seen me." After saying this to Highway, he quickly flew toward the place where Mo Xiaojun was hiding. Now that he had a rough idea of his target, he could easily lure Mo Xiaojun out with his cultivation. After taking control of Shou Chun made some inquiries, and the information he obtained was similar to what Highway had said. Regarding Yu Qianqiu, the two only knew some things that happened in Cornucopia, and they were all unimportant things, which made Shou Chun very depressed. In the back mountain of the 100 Flowers Valley, Tianyi flew to a remote place. His palms formed a trumpet and made a cuckoo-cuckoo sound. There was movement in the ancient trees not far away. Li Qiuxiang flew over and looked at Tianyi strangely. "Why are you here now? What's the matter? Your man misses you. Can't I come over to see you?" It was not Tianyi's voice. Tianyi did not speak. The voice came from behind. Li Qiuxiang was shocked. She suddenly turned around, but what she saw were two demonic red lights that pierced her heart. In the 100 Flowers Valley, Shouchen strolled toward the mountain gate of the 100 Flowers Palace. He looked around and could not help but sigh. Previously, he was like a rat on the street that everyone wanted to beat up. He did not dare to return even if he had a home. This time, if he had not changed his appearance, it would probably be inconvenient for him to return. Thinking that all of this was caused by Yu Qianqiu, he could not help but grit his teeth. "Halt!" The two disciples guarding the 100 Flowers Palace flashed out. They pushed their palms at Shouchen and shouted, "This place is not for trespassing. Report if there's anything. If there's nothing, leave immediately." Shouchen was stunned. Only then did he remember that he was no longer the young palace master, who could enter and leave the 100 Flowers Palace at will. However, since he dared to come so brazenly, he naturally prepared an excuse. He cupped his hands and said, "I'm a serving disciple under consecrated Yen of the 10,000 demons. This time, I'm here to visit the 100 Flowers Palace Master under the orders of the Ancestral Master. I have something to tell you. Please report it." After the Yin clan's father and son caused a ruckus all those years ago, Supporting Immortal Island had seized the opportunity to eliminate all the disciples related to the Myriad Devil Palace. It could be said that Supporting Immortal Island had seized the opportunity to take control of the Flower Palace. Hearing that it was a disciple of the 10,000 demons, the disciples guarding the gate shouted angrily, "Our palace master does not want to see anyone from the 10,000 demons." Shouchen's expression changed. With his cultivation, he could easily barge into the 100 Flowers Palace, but he was afraid that there would be scouts sent by Yu Qianqiu in the surroundings. He was afraid that he would attract unnecessary trouble. So he came openly, but he still ran into trouble. At that moment, someone called out from inside, "Let him in." The voice was as pleasant as an oriole. Shouchen looked up, and his expression eased a lot. It was none other than his younger sister, Yin Zixia. Actually, Bai Hua Fairy and her daughter did not want to see anyone from the 10,000 demons. Otherwise, the Supporting Immortals Island would not have been able to control the 100 Flowers Palace so easily. However, Yin Zixia, who happened to pass by, recognized this Shouchen. She knew that he was someone who had been serving Grandpa for a long time, and had never seen the 10,000 demons. Since he suddenly appeared here, there must be something important, so she let him in. Yin Zixia curiously looked at the approaching Shouchen and asked, "Shouchen, why are you here instead of staying by Grandpa's side?" "Greetings, young miss." Shouchen reluctantly bowed and said, "Founding Master told me to pass a message to the Baihua Palace Master." "Ah." Yin Zixia didn't think much of it and nodded. "Then come with me." She then led Shouchen into the 100 Flowers Palace. Inside the Hundred Flowers Palace, the famous beauty of China's cultivation world already had some white hair on her temples, causing Shouchen, who was standing below, to feel a bit worried and forgot to bow. Bai Hua Fairy's elegance didn't diminish as she sat on the highest seat in the hall, observing Shouchen below and frowned. If you have something to say, then say it. Shouchen regained his senses, looked at the maids around him, then knelt down and kowtowed. This junior greets the palace master. Greets the palace master. Seeing him bowing so respectfully, Bai Hua Fairy was a bit surprised, but after a bit of hesitation, her expression became a bit more friendly as she raised her hand. No need to be so polite, just say it. Shouchen looked up. This junior brings a private message, but he sent his voice. Palace master, please leave. Founding master told me to bring news of the young palace master. Hearing that, Bai Hua Fairy's expression changed, but quickly returned to normal, glanced around and waved her hand. All of you leave. Zixia, you also leave. Yan Zixia was a bit surprised, but still obediently left with the maids. When only the two of them were left in the hall, Bai Hua Fairy suddenly stood up, quickly set up a soundproof barrier around the hall, and asked with excitement. Just now, who did you say you brought news of? Although she understood what he said, she still didn't believe it, because she had always thought that her son was killed by Yu Qianqiu. But now there's news of her son. So how could she not be excited? Shouchen was also a bit excited. After kowtowing 3 times, he looked up at Bai Hua Fairy and spoke with a choked voice. Your son has been unfilial. I've made mother worry hearing that. Bai Hua Fairy's face paled as she stared at the kneeling person, stuttering. You, what did you call me? Chapter 955. Your son was heavily injured after a fierce battle with that traitor named you in Spirit Fong Valley. I almost lost my life. Luckily Grandpa took me in and saved my life. Shouchen immediately knelt down and told his mother the gist of what happened. He was very confident in his mother, not worried that Bai Hua Fairy would leak the secret. Then he said, Before I left, Father specifically told me to come and see if mother and sister are doing well. Bai Hua Fairy felt like she was struck by lightning, stunned on the spot, still in disbelief. You said you're Xing heir? No, that's impossible. You can change your appearance, but your height. The body possession thing was too strange. Even Yan Juexing himself was shocked by it. So he didn't tell Bai Hua Fairy about it. Shouchen stood up straight. Your son has practiced a divine martial art. Changing my appearance is nothing to me. Just wait for me to restore my appearance for mother to see. Saying so, he clapped his hands together, putting his index and middle fingers together in between his eyebrows, shouting, Appearance is born from the heart. Return my true body. A wave of black killing intent came out from his body, enveloping his entire body. A series of cracking sounds could be heard. When the black fiend was absorbed back into his body, Yan Juexing's original appearance was revealed in the hall, wearing a smaller set of clothes. Bai Hua Fairy had never seen such a strange thing before, so shocked that she couldn't say anything. After a while, she slowly walked down from the high seat, staring at Yan Juexing and asked, Are you really my Xing heir? You really didn't die? I remember when I first started cultivating, mother brought me to the rooftop to look at the stars in the night sky. You said that the Xing in my name is the same as the stars in the sky. They both shine. I then told mother that when I grow up, I will take down the brightest star in the sky and give it to mother. I remember how happy mother was at the time. Yan Juexing smiled and said, This was something that happened a very, very long time ago. Only the two of them knew. In an instant, Bai Hua Fairy's eyes became misty as she rushed forward and embraced Yan Juexing, speaking emotionally. You really are my Xing heir. You really aren't dead. Mother, don't worry. That traitor surnamed you won't be able to kill me. Yan Juexing gritted his teeth and said, I came back this time to settle the score with him. As long as I get rid of him, our family can reunite. Bai Hua Fairy suddenly pushed him away, panicking. You still want to find Yu Qianqiu? No, the current Yu Qianqiu was no longer the same as before. His power was far too great, and even the hundreds of demigod stage lords from the various nations were under his command. You can't beat him. Isn't it better to hide your identity? I don't ask for a family reunion. I only ask that you two be safe. Mother, You don't have to worry. Your son is no longer the same as before. If I didn't have absolute confidence in winning, why would I come out to die in vain? Yan Juexing coldly laughed. He made it impossible for our family to reunite. The pain he made me suffer, I will return it to him 1,000 times over. How can I let him continue to be so arrogant in the cultivation world? If I don't get my revenge, I'm not a man. No, we won't get our revenge. Our family didn't lose anything anyway. We're all alive and well. Bai Hua Fairy grabbed Yan Juexing's arm and said, I've heard about you practicing demonic arts. As soon as you show your face in the cultivation world, you'll be surrounded and attacked by the entire cultivation world. I can't even imagine that. Mother, I really don't want to suffer the pain of losing my son anymore. Yan Juexing scowled. Surrounded and attacked? With just them? They're nothing but a bunch of fence-sitters. They'll listen to whoever's fist is stronger. As long as I kill that traitor surnamed you, who else would dare to come and die? No, even if you don't think for yourself, you have to think for your little sister. Bai Hua Fairy didn't let him off the hook. Little sister? What does this have to do with her? Yan Juexing scowled. Bai Hua Fairy powerlessly shook her head. When Yu Qianqiu was still cultivating on Fu Xian Island, he had already met your little sister. The two of them were originally in love with each other. The only difference was that they were going to marry each other. But then because of the grudge between you and Yu Qianqiu, your little sister's heart was broken. When she found out that you were killed by Yu Qianqiu, your little sister would often cry in secret. The two of you kept fighting. The one who was hurt the most was your little sister. One was her own brother. The other was someone she liked. What would your little sister do? I can tell that your little sister still likes him. Even if you can win against Yu Qianqiu, what would your little sister do after you kill Yu Qianqiu? Do you want her to wash her face with tears every day? Yan Juexing was stunned. Not even in his dreams could he imagine that Yu Qianqiu would seduce his little sister. In fact, ever since Yu Qianqiu cut off his love with the brilliant sword, he didn't put this matter to heart. He didn't know that the female lead of the story would be so infatuated that the story would become so melodramatic. If he had to blame something, he could only blame his dirty hands at the time. He shouldn't have touched Yan Zixia so carelessly. For some women, as long as you don't cross the line, there won't be much of a problem. But once you cross a certain line, it'll be very troublesome. Coincidentally, Yan Zixia was this kind of woman, deeply rooted in love. Bastard, despicable. Yan Juexing was so angry that his body trembled. He didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to make a move behind his back and take advantage of him first. He was so angry that his eyes faintly emitted red light. He gritted his teeth and said, Mother, don't be naive. Maybe sister has feelings for him. But that guy is not a good person. Even if I let him go, he won't let me go. You probably don't know that. He's already placed people around Bai Hua Palace. As soon as I show up, he'll kill me. I guarantee that no matter who pleads for me, he won't let me go. Saying so, he clasped his hands together and shouted, Appearance comes from the heart. Borrow my avatar. A black fiend appeared and covered his entire body, followed by the sound of bones cracking. When the black fiend retracted, he returned to his usual appearance, turned around and left. Bai Hua Fairy hurriedly grabbed him again. What are you trying to do? Can't even I talk to you? Unexpectedly, a gust of wind pushed her back a few steps. Yan Juexing suddenly turned around. That animal dared to play with my little sister's feelings. I definitely won't let him go. I'll give him a taste of his own medicine. Just wait until I've also played with his woman. Then I'll let him have a taste of what it's like. Don't worry, Mother, it's better to get the pain over with. After I kill him, as time passes, my little sister will naturally walk out of the shadow. Do you want your little sister to hate you for the rest of her life? Bai Hua Fairy shouted. Hating me for the rest of my life is better than falling in love with someone you shouldn't love and being sad for an outsider. Yan Juexing casually formed a hand seal, freezing Bai Hua Fairy in place, only regaining her senses after Yan Juexing left about a minute later. After the relationship between the four major clans, and Bai Changchun was exposed, their status in the cultivation world had suddenly increased. Logically speaking, the Bai clan of the four major clans had the greatest honor, but in fact, the Wu clan was in the limelight. The reason for this was none other than the fact that Wu family has a daughter named Wu Lixue, the woman of the current Yao Gui realm's torture envoy, the strongest expert in the world. This was something that Yu Qianqiu had personally admitted. Who in the world didn't know about it? Nowadays, the entire cultivation world no longer has any national boundaries. Everyone lived in harmony with each other. Therefore, the current Wu clan's Hat Island was extraordinarily bustling. Cultivators from all over the world frequently visited this place. And the Wu clan had become the most prosperous, lively, and largest auction venue in the entire cultivation world. Wealth was rolling in, and it could be said that they had earned a lot of money. However, it was useless even if others were jealous. No one dared to do anything to Wu family. Who told Wu family to have a daughter named Wu Lixue? And Wu Lixue was Yu Qianqiu's woman. Who in the world would dare to touch Wu family? Gulu House was a restaurant opened by Wu family on Hat Island, as well as the largest and best restaurant on Hat Island. Shouchen changed out of the myriad demon's palace's attire and ordered a table of food and wine. He sat alone by the window and slowly drank his wine. He looked at the bustling scene of people coming and going on the streets below, and his expression was dark and gloomy. Everything that happened that year felt like it happened just yesterday. It was here that he first met Wu Lixue, the first woman in his life who could make his heart beat faster. He didn't know why he was attracted to Wu Lixue. In fact, he had seen many women who were more beautiful than Wu Lixue. But he had never felt the way he did when he saw Wu Lixue. He didn't know what he liked about Wu Lixue. Perhaps it was her innocent smile that could make her big eyes look like crescent moons, or her lively cuteness, or even her stupid words. In short, everything about her had an astonishing allure to him. Unfortunately, Wu Lixue came with Yu Qianqiu, who he hated to the bone. However, at that time, he had a good relationship with him, and they called each other brothers. Perhaps they could have been very good friends. Later, some accidents happened, and Wu Lixue was violated by the son of the Daluo sect master. Logically speaking, since he liked Wu Lixue, he should have stepped forward bravely. However, he was filled with misgivings at the time. The Daluo sect was truly powerful at the time, and he was a man with great ambitions. How could he ruin his plans by offending the Daluo sect for the sake of a woman? Even now, he still felt a dull ache in his heart when he thought about it. He had spent countless nights vexed over it. If the situation had happened now, he would definitely have stepped forward bravely to save the damsel in distress, and he would definitely have won Wu Lixue's favor. However, there were no ifs for what had already happened. At that time, he was the young palace master of the 100 Flowers Palace, and he didn't dare to do it. But that little disciple of Fuxian Island did it instead. He simply threw caution to the wind and publicly announced that Wu Lixue was his woman. He even beat up the son of the Daluo sect master for Wu Lixue. And because of that, he formed a deep grudge with the Daluo sect. However, with effort comes reward, and Yu Qianqiu really captured the heart of the beauty. Wu Lixue had a good impression of him on the spot, and he could see it from the shy look in Wu Lixue's eyes when she looked at Yu Qianqiu at that time. Her shy look cut into his heart like a knife, and he wished that he could go back in time and let the situation repeat itself. He would definitely stand up for Yu Qianqiu and stand up for her. However, a missed opportunity was a missed opportunity, and it was impossible to go back in time. So what if his heart ached? He didn't do anything wrong at that time, because he was a person with great ambitions. No matter what, his actions were more rational than Yu Qianqiu's. Chapter 956. Later on, Yu Qianqiu was expelled from the Fuxian Island because he had made too many troubles. However, it was inconceivable that he had become the disciple of Bai Changchun, the torture envoy of the demon ghost region, who was the #1 expert in the world. This traitor was really lucky. However, his luck was not bad either. He had cultivated the treasure book left by the demonic god. What happened later was known by everyone in the world. He and Yu Qianqiu had become mortal enemies. However, he had failed several times when they fought against each other. However, this was not what made his heart ache the most. What made his heart ache was that the two of them had turned the act into reality. Wu Lixue had truly become Yu Qianqiu's woman. Even so, When he fought against Yu Qianqiu, he had never thought of hurting her. But that traitor Yu Qianqiu had actually made a move against his younger sister. This was truly unbearable. Since he couldn't obtain her, then he, Yu Qianqiu, shouldn't even think about obtaining her. Lady Wu. Lady Wu. Madam Yu. The flattering noises on the street made Shouchen come back to himself. Shouchen's pupil shrank suddenly. He looked at the crowd on the street. 4 or 5 young ladies in the Wu clan's clothes were chattering and protecting a lady who had a pet crow on her shoulder. That lady was Wu Lixue. A group of young ladies were high-spirited. Because of Wu Lixue, they enjoyed the respectful gazes of the people on both sides and walked into the Gulu house. The crowd on the street became bustling again. Many ladies from different sects looked back at the Gulu house enviously from time to time. Some of them stopped to look at the Gulu house and didn't want to leave. Their facial expressions kept changing, as if they were imagining something. Maybe they were imagining how great it would be if they were Yu Qianqiu's woman. Lady Wu, you are here. Amidst the waiter's compliments, a series of footsteps came up the stairs. 5 to 6 women appeared in Shouchen's sight. Wu Lixue was still the same as before. Time had not left any traces on her face, but there seemed to be a hint of sadness between her brows. She no longer had the innocent smile she used to have. This made Shouchen's heart clench slightly. It seemed like she did not have a good life with Yu Qianqiu. Wu Lixue's clear eyes glanced at Shouchen, but she didn't pay much attention to him. Then, under the guidance of the waiter, the group of ladies entered the private room facing the river. After the waiter came out, the girls sitting around the table immediately chattered. Then the door closed, and Wu Lixue, who was sitting in the middle, disappeared behind the door. However, with Shouchen's hearing, he could tell that the girls were talking about Wu Lixue. Yu Qianqiu's name kept popping up. Shouchen raised the wine glass to his lips, forgetting to drink. He looked at the closed door absent-mindedly. Later, when the waiter served the dishes, the door closed several times, and he saw Wu Lixue several times. Wu Lixue seemed to sense that someone was looking at her. She also looked curiously at him, who was sitting alone by the window outside. She felt like they had met before, but at the same time, she didn't know him. The crow on Wu Lixue's shoulder had its eyes closed most of the time. It would open occasionally, but it seemed to be dozing off most of the time. It didn't leave Wu Lixue's shoulder at all. After the dishes and wine were served, the door to the private room was gently closed by the waiter. It didn't open for a long time, and only the chattering could be heard from inside. Shouchen let out a soft sigh and drank the wine he had raised to his lips. When he refilled his wine, he realized that the wine in the flask had already been emptied. He called for the waiter to bring a few flasks of wine. When the waiter came down with the wine, he shook his head. He thought that this was another person drowning his sorrows in wine. This kind of person was common. Sister Lixue, Yu Qianqiu hasn't come to see you for so many years. What has he been doing? I don't know either. Sister Lixue, if Yu Qianqiu comes next time, you must bring us to see him. He, the #1 expert in the world. I heard that he's very powerful. So many people are afraid of him. Shouchen, who was drinking alone, suddenly froze. He suddenly turned to look at the closed door and narrowed his eyes. This conversation immediately attracted his attention. Immediately inside the private room, a group of ladies who acted like reserved ladies in front of outsiders had already revealed their true colors. They toasted each other and drank happily. Their aura wasn't any weaker than that of the men. Wu Lixue's innocent nature also broke out when she was in the mood to drink. The trace of sadness between her eyebrows turned into high spirits. She rolled up the sleeves of her hands, revealing a pair of white and tender arms that were like pink lotus roots. She happily joined the ranks of the people who were pouring wine into each other's mouths. It could be seen that this group of ladies had done such crazy things behind the backs of their elders. However, the crow suffered. It didn't seem to have a good impression of the wine. It jumped on Wu Lixue's shoulder and used its butt to express its protest to everyone. Miss Wu Lixue, do you want to know why Yu Qianqiu hasn't come to see you for so many years? Do you want to know where Yu Qianqiu is right now? Do you want to know what he's doing now? I'm Yu Qianqiu's friend. I just came back from Yu Qianqiu's place. If you want to know anything about Yu Qianqiu, I'll stay in the forest in the west for a short while before I leave. Remember, Yu Qianqiu is currently doing something important. It's not convenient for too many people to know about it. It's best if you come alone quietly and don't alarm others. I won't wait for you if you're late. The sudden sound transmission caused Wu Lixue, who was having a great time, to be startled. Someone immediately asked, Sister Lixue, what's wrong? Nothing. Wu Lixue shook her head. However, she quickly left the banquet and opened the door. She saw that the table facing the window was empty, but the person sitting by the window was gone. Could it be that he was the one who sent the voice transmission just now? Wu Lixue muttered to herself. She silently closed the door and sat back at the banquet. She frowned and pondered. A few of her drinking friends noticed her abnormality and asked, What's wrong? Wu Lixue glanced at the few of them and muttered, I want to go out into the forest alone, but I don't want anyone to recognize me. Does anyone have any ideas? The women looked at each other with understanding expressions. As Yu Qianqiu hadn't come to see Wu Lixue for a long time, Wu Lixue was often depressed. Because of this, the family sent them to think of ways to accompany Wu Lixue. The women mistakenly thought that Wu Lixue wanted to go out alone to relax. They didn't think much of it. You're going out alone. I'm afraid it's not safe. It's better for us to accompany you. Someone voiced out their concerns. Subsequently, someone else added, That's right. If something were to happen to you, it might provoke Yu Qianqiu to come and punish us. With your famous temper, our Wu clan wouldn't be able to bear it. Wu Lixue had a naive temperament, but she wasn't a fool. She knew what everyone was worried about. Because of Yu Qianqiu, the Wu clan's glorious future was all pinned on her. The entire Wu clan treated her like a pearl in their palm and wouldn't let her take any risks. However, after thinking about it, she felt that nothing would happen. It was also because of Yu Qianqiu. Who in the world would dare to touch her? She paused for a moment and said, I can't think of anyone who would harm me, and I don't think anyone would dare to do so. I'm just going to take a walk around the Wu clan, and we'll be back soon. Nothing will happen. The women looked at each other and felt that it was true. With Yu Qianqiu's current power and cultivation, would anyone dare to touch Wu Lixue? No one would dare to do so even if they had 100 guts. But if the clan knows that we let you go out alone, all of us will be punished. Someone whispered, but from the tone, it could be heard that they were already relieved. It doesn't matter. I will go out for a walk quietly, and we'll be back soon. No one will find out. Even if someone finds out and the clan punishes all of you, I will definitely come forward and plead for leniency for all of you. I guarantee that nothing will happen to all of you. Wu Lixue confidently patted her big chest like a man. Her naive temperament was undoubtedly revealed. The women were originally in a dilemma. They didn't dare to go against the clan's instructions, but they also didn't want to make Wu Lixue unhappy, because all the clans had secretly instructed them to please Wu Lixue, so that they could obtain Wu Lixue's support in the clan's internal struggle for power. This was a crucial matter. With Wu Lixue's guarantee, everyone immediately heaved a sigh of relief. No one doubted Wu Lixue's powerful influence in the Wu clan. As long as Wu Lixue came forward to plead for leniency, even the clan head and clan elders would have to give face. Most importantly, the women were extremely confident that no one in the world would dare to touch a single hair of Wu Lixue. In a situation where nothing happened, they could still make Wu Lixue happy. Why wouldn't they do it? But how can we not let others recognize you? A woman looked at everyone and asked, Does anyone know how to disguise themselves? The women shook their heads. Then, someone seemed to think of something and clapped her hands. She took out a white gauze hat from her storage bag and smiled. Just wear this to cover your face. Thank you. Wu Lixue's eyes lit up. Her naive and playful personality came out again. After receiving it, she immediately put it on her head and asked, How is it? How is it? Can you recognize me? The women's eyes focused on her impressive figure. They realized that although they couldn't see her face, her figure could be recognized by those who had seen her before. Wu Lixue followed everyone's gaze and looked at herself. She immediately pouted and understood. I have a way. Another person happily clapped his hands, and took out a black female shawl robe from his storage pouch. He handed it over and said, "You just need to wear this. With a veil on your head, no one will be able to recognize you." Wu Lixue took it and immediately tried it on. The women cheered after seeing it and confirmed that it worked. No one would be able to recognize her. However, there was still a slightly older person who was worried. "Younger sister Lixue, don't take too long. Go and come back quickly." Chapter 957. Wu Lixue immediately extended a finger from her black robe and wagged it playfully. "Just 2 hours. I will be back within 2 hours. Don't open the door and let others see that I'm not here. Continue to talk and eat. No one will know that I'm not here." Finishing her words, she chuckled and leaped out from the window by the river. "Hurry up and come back." The slightly older woman quickly exhorted again. Seeing that Wu Lixue had disappeared, she sat down and shook her head with a sigh. "That man of hers. I remember that when he first met Lixue and came to the Wu clan, many people in the Wu clan looked down on him. In the end, every time he appeared in the Wu clan, we realized that his cultivation was getting higher and his authority was getting heavier. Now his cultivation is #1 in the world, and his authority is monstrous. But he seems to be a little too busy. I don't know if Lixue is fortunate or unfortunate to be his woman. Anyway, it's no different from not having a man." Once this was said, someone immediately agreed. "That's right. Actually, to us women, being able to be with our man every day isn't necessarily a blissful thing. For those who fight and kill outside all day long. So what if they obtain the entire world?" Shui is a very good example. That Yu Qianqiu doesn't even have time to care about her. But in the eyes of many people in the Wu clan, whether Shui is happy or not is secondary. It's fine as long as Shui can be Yu Qianqiu's woman in name. After a sigh, the woman turned and asked the person who spoke earlier, "If Yu Qianqiu is your man, or if you are Shui, would you be happy?" That person's eyes immediately lit up. "I want to. Unfortunately, it's impossible." Weren't you feeling sorry for Shui just now and saying that it's meaningless for such a man to fight and kill outside all day long? Why are you thinking about it now? Pity is pity, and meaningless is meaningless. But if she finds a useless man who stays by her side all day long, wouldn't it be even more meaningless? Maybe one day when she gets bullied by him, she won't even be able to stand up for him. That's why I would rather feel empty and lonely when I'm alone in my room. As long as I can enjoy everyone's envious gazes when I come out. Look at Shui. Everyone in the world fawns over her. Whatever she wants, someone will immediately think of a way to get it for her. I'm so envious of her. Last, you're thinking of love. When Shui comes back later, you can discuss with her and see if you can get Yu Qianqiu to accept you as his concubine. You're the concubine of the #1 expert in the world. Hee. The group of women burst into laughter, and the room was instantly filled with laughter and scolding. Wu Lixue, who was wearing a gauze hat and a black robe, quietly flew over the old forest on the west side of Hat Island. She looked around behind the gauze curtain, but didn't see anyone. She immediately shouted, "I'm here. Is anyone here?" The mountain range rose and fell, and the forest valley was secluded. Not even the sound of birds could be heard. The surroundings were too quiet, so quiet that it made people feel a little apprehensive. Especially the swaying shadows in the shade of the trees. It gave people an indescribable feeling of strangeness. She shouted, but no one answered. Wu Lixue muttered in her heart. Could it be that he left because he didn't want to wait? So she shouted again, "I'm here. Is anyone here?" She didn't know that Shouchen, who was not far away, was looking at her. He was just scared by Wu Lixue's strange clothes. After being beaten by Yu Qianqiu several times, he became more vigilant. He was worried that it might be a trap. After confirming that the person was indeed Wu Lixue, he carefully looked around. Seeing that there was no one else, he let out a sigh of relief and dashed out. Wu Lixue didn't hear any response, and no one came out, so he guessed that the man might have left. He looked around and was about to leave. Suddenly, he saw a man standing on a treetop not far away from him. It was the man who had been drinking in the Gula house. She saw that the person looked at her and asked, "Are you Miss Wu Lixue?" Wu Lixue pulled the gauze curtain that covered her face up to her hat and revealed her face. She replied, "Yes, I am. How should I address you?" The person didn't answer her. Instead, he waved at her and said, "Follow me." After saying that, he turned around and flew into the depths of the forest. "Is there anything that can't be said here?" Wu Lixue shouted. She looked around and felt that it was a bit gloomy. In fact, it was because of the humidity in the forest. The person still didn't answer her and flew into the depths of the forest. Wu Lixue thought for a moment and realized that there was probably no one in the world who would dare to hurt him. In addition, he really wanted to know about Yu Qianqiu's situation. He gritted his teeth and foolishly flew after him. However, she was still a little vigilant. She kept a distance and looked back from time to time. When she saw that the whole Wu clan had become a small piece of land, she couldn't help but shout nervously, "Who are you? If you don't say anything, I'm going back." At this moment, the person in front of her went into the forest and disappeared. Wu Lixue stopped in the air and didn't know whether she should follow him or not. Suddenly, the person's voice came from afar again. "Come, right here. I can tell you anything you want to know." Wu Lixue hesitated for a moment and continued to fly forward. Soon, she arrived at the place where the person disappeared. She saw that there was a huge empty space in the forest. It was bare rocks, and some weeds were stubbornly growing out from the cracks in the rocks. The person stood there with his hands behind his back, waiting for her silently. It was as if he knew that she would definitely follow him. Wu Lixue looked around and gritted her teeth. She landed behind the person and asked, "You said that you are Yu Qianqiu's friend. What's your name?" "Miss Shui. We've met a few times in the past. You might not remember me." Shouchen slowly turned around and smiled at Wu Lixue. "I didn't expect Miss Shui to still be so beautiful. You haven't changed at all. We've met in the past." Wu Lixue thought about it doubtfully. She felt that the person's eyes were a little familiar, but she couldn't remember where they had met. She shook her head and said, "Forget it. Didn't you say that you know where Yu Qianqiu is and what he's doing? Please tell me. I'm really happy to be able to meet Miss Shui alone here. Maybe it's because it's not easy to recognize me in this form. When I change back to my original form, Miss Shui will be able to remember who I am." Shouchen clasped his hands together and pointed at his forehead. He shouted, "Appearance comes from the heart. Return me my true form." A wave of black mist immediately spread out and wrapped around his body. This strange scene caused Wu Lixue to take a step back in fear. At the same time, the crow that was resting on Wu Lixue's shoulder suddenly opened its eyes. It stared at the surging black mist with a sharp gaze, as if it was facing a great enemy. Suddenly, the black mist shrunk and Yan Juexing appeared. He asked with a smile, "Miss Shui, do you still remember me?" "Ah, you." Wu Lixue stammered in horror. You're Yan Juexing. Aren't you already dead?" She subconsciously took a step back. The grudge between Yu Qianqiu and Yan Juexing was known to everyone in the cultivation world. If there was anyone who dared to go against Yu Qianqiu in the cultivation world, it would be Yan Juexing. Wu Lixue couldn't help but be afraid. "Dead? Lady Shui is looking down on me too much. Yu Qianqiu's little tricks aren't enough to kill me." Yan Juexing slowly walked towards the retreating Wu Lixue and said with a faint smile, "Miss Shui, we're old acquaintances. Are you afraid of me?" Why did you trick me here?" Wu Lixue retreated in horror. Suddenly, she twisted her body and fled into the air. "Run. Since you're here, stay and accompany me." Yan Juexing opened his mouth and 7 devilish spirit snakes flew out quickly. In the blink of an eye, they caught up with the escaping Wu Lixue. They wrapped her tightly in the air and dragged her back like a stick. Wu Lixue, who was dragged back to the ground, struggled hard, but it was of no use. With her current cultivation, how could she get rid of Yan Juexing's devilish spirit snakes? The strange thing was that the crow on her shoulder was nowhere to be seen. However, Yan Juexing didn't care about a small pet crow at all. Seeing that she couldn't escape and Yan Juexing was approaching, Wu Lixue hurriedly shouted, "Help! Yu Qianqiu, help me." The help didn't come, but Yan Juexing was shocked. He mistakenly thought that Yu Qianqiu was nearby. He quickly looked around and heard Wu Lishua crying. Yu Qianqiu, where are you? Come and save Shuer. He breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that this woman was crying for help with her only hope. In fact, Yu Qianqiu wasn't here at all. No. Yan Juixing's eyes were cold. So what if Yu Qianqiu was here? I'm going to settle the score with him anyway. There's no reason to be afraid of him. What are you shouting for? If you shout again, I'll let it get into your mouth. Yan Juixing shouted in a deep voice, and the demonic spirit snake that entangled Wu Lishua immediately stuck its head out. The ferocious snake head flicked its tongue in and out of Wu Lishua's mouth, and its red eyes looked cold and cruel. Women were born to be afraid of snakes. She was so scared that she didn't dare to shout anymore. She closed her mouth tightly. Only her tears kept flowing out, and she kept shaking her head. Seeing that she stopped shouting, the snake's head slowly retracted. Yan Juixing's eyes swept slightly to the sky. He saw that the crow fluttered its wings and flew down from the sky. It landed on Wu Lishua's shoulder without fear and stared at him coldly. Its eyes were a bit like a human's, full of arrogance. Of all the things you want to raise, you raise a crow. You deserve to be Wu Lishua. You're different from ordinary women. Yan Juixing sneered. He walked to Wu Lishua and pulled off the gauze hat on her head. He threw it away casually. Then he pinched Wu Lishua's chin and slowly raised it, asking, I don't understand. What's so good about that scumbag Yu Qianqiu? He left you here and didn't care about you at all. It means that he doesn't care about you at all. If it weren't for him, you wouldn't have suffered like this. I'm different. I've always cared about you. If you're willing to follow me, I promise you won't have to suffer anymore. Chapter 958. Woo Woo. Wu Lishua shook her head hard and got rid of the hand that was pinching her chin. What? Do you hate me that much? Which part of me can't be compared to Yu Qianqiu, that villain? Yan Juixing's hand touched Wu Lishua's face again and wiped the tears on her cheeks. Your skin is so good. I really don't want to force myself on you, Shui. Promise to be my woman. I can give you whatever he can give you. I can give you whatever he can't. In short, I can give you whatever you want. Ugh! Wu Lishua bit on Yan Juixing's hand. She bit with all her might. However, Yan Juixing didn't react at all. He allowed Wu Lishua to bite his hand. His eyes gradually turned fierce. Suddenly, he pulled his hand back and slapped Wu Lishua's face. He shouted angrily, Bitch! I gave you a chance, but you didn't want it. You asked for it. A palm print immediately appeared on Wu Lishua's face. Wu Lishua sobbed as she slowly turned her head around. Choking with pain, she said, Yu Qianqiu, quickly come and save Shuer. Her voice suddenly stopped, and two bewitching red lights suddenly flashed before her eyes. Her consciousness gradually sank, and she forgot the pain and everything. Bitch! Yan Juixing cursed with anger. As the bewitching red light in his eyes disappeared, his eyes were replaced by beast-like madness. He opened his mouth, and the 7 demonic spiritual snakes immediately let go of Wu Lishua and went back into his mouth. Hee hee. Yan Juixing stared at Wu Lishua, who was standing in front of him obediently. His face was filled with excitement. He smiled sinisterly and said, Yu Qianqiu, I want to see how you will react after your woman becomes my woman. Do you know? Your pain will be my greatest joy. Haha. He stretched his right hand to Wu Lishua's neck and broke the cloak rope tied to her shoulder. At the same time, Yan Juixing let out a cry of pain and dodged with a teleport. From the back of his right palm to his elbow, there were 5 bloody holes. Blood dripped down from the 5 fingers of his right palm. Yan Juixing looked at Wu Lishua in disbelief. The inconspicuous crow on Wu Lishua's shoulder was flapping its wings in front of Wu Lishua, as though it was protecting him. It was this inconspicuous crow that had taken advantage of his moment of carelessness to launch a sneak attack at lightning speed. If it weren't for his quick reaction, he would have more than 5 bloody holes on his body. Looking at the 5 bloody holes on his arm, Yan Juixing was very surprised. With the toughness of his demonic body, how could a small crow hurt him? Squinting his eyes to take a closer look, he immediately discovered that this crow was somewhat different from ordinary crows. There were 3 colorful feathers on its head, and the feathers were faintly glowing with a purplish-blue luster. Its beak and claws were golden in color, and its eyes were filled with a human-like charm. So it's a spirit beast. I was wondering why she would bring a crow with her. Yan Juexing's arm shook, and 5 strands of black miasma immediately gathered on the 5 bloody holes. After a while, the 5 strands of black miasma gradually shrank. In the blink of an eye, the 5 bloody holes on his arm disappeared, and the skin on his arm returned to normal. You're courting death, beast. Yan Juexing shouted coldly, and his 5 fingers formed a claw with black miasma. With a whoosh, he appeared in front of Wu Lixue, and directly grabbed the fluttering crow, wanting to use his demonic claws to kill it. However, this crow was not to be trifled with. It opened its mouth and spat out an orange-red flame, which quickly enveloped its opponent. Yan Juexing did not care about a mere flame. Even if the flame enveloped him, he still wanted to use his demonic claws to take the life of the crow. However, Yan Juexing soon discovered that there was something wrong with the flame. Once he rushed into the orange-red flame, the black miasma that enveloped the demonic claws immediately let out a sizzling sound. Yan Juexing felt an unbearable pain all over his body, as though countless steel needles were pricking him. This flame could restrain his demonic technique? Yan Juexing turned pale with fright, and his figure quickly retreated from the flame. He did not know that this flame had a name, which was Phoenix Flame. It was not something ordinary flames could compare to. It specialized in restraining some evil things, and his demonic technique was no exception. This was because the crow's cultivation was shallow. Otherwise, with his cultivation, he would not be able to escape from the Phoenix Flame. The flame that was spat out by the crow's mouth quickly wrapped around its body, and the fire wings that extended out made it seem like the crow had turned into a dignified big bird. This kind of bird was very beautiful, and Yan Juexing had never seen it before. However, how could Yan Juexing be frightened by a strange bird? A gloomy expression appeared on his face as he sneered. What a loyal little beast! Demonic fist. Before he finished speaking, he had already rushed into the flame like a meteor and punched out. Bang! The flame dissipated, and the crow could not dodge in time. It let out a miserable cry, and was beaten into the deep forest. It was unknown whether it was dead or alive. After forcefully killing the crow, Yan Juexing snorted coldly. Can't even withstand a single blow. He strode in front of Wu Lixue, and grabbed her collar, wanting to tear off her clothes and do that beastly thing. However, at this moment, a weak female voice suddenly came from the deep forest. Sister Schwerer, I can't beat him. Run, run. There's someone. Yan Juexing was shocked, and quickly looked over. He saw the crow that was sent flying wobbly for a while before landing on the ground, and bouncing a few times. Then, it flew up again, and landed on the ground and bounced a few times. It was spitting out a human voice with blood on its mouth. The one who spoke was this crow. It can actually speak. Yan Juexing felt it was strange. He had never seen an animal that could speak in the human world, and it was a clear and melodious female voice. Looking at the fluttering crow, Yan Juexing's lips suddenly curled into an evil smile. He looked at Wu Lixue and said, Schwerer's figure is really not bad. I have never seen it before. Schwerer, take off your clothes and let me have a look. However, to Yan Juexing's surprise, Wu Lixue stood there with her brows slightly furrowed. She did not have any reaction at all. Yan Juexing was a little surprised and stunned. He had never seen anyone disobeying his command when he was controlled by his demonic eyes. He immediately shouted, Take off your clothes. Take them off. As soon as he said that, Wu Lixue's expression immediately became extremely painful. She seemed to be doing something intense in her heart. Damn it! Yan Juexing's expression twitched. He had never encountered such a strange thing. With a ferocious expression, he lost his patience. He raised his arm, and was about to do it himself. However, before his hand touched Wu Lixue, he saw a ball of faint light suddenly burst out from Wu Lixue's body. It wrapped around Wu Lixue and kept shining, as if it wanted to avoid all evil. As soon as the light shone on Yan Juexing's hand, Yan Juexing immediately let out a strange cry. There was a bone-piercing pain from his palm. It was simply unbearable. It was 100 times more painful than the fire that the crow spat out. Yan Juexing didn't dare to touch the light again. He quickly retreated and dodged. He looked at Wu Lixue in shock. He couldn't figure out what was going on. Wu Lixue, who was wrapped in the light, still had a pained expression on his face. However, as the light pulsed, a group of faint light spots gently surged out of Wu Lixue's body. Those light spots were sparkling and translucent like little seven-colored stars, sparkling delicately. After a while, countless colorful light spots surged out and gathered into a dreamy galaxy, wrapping Wu Lixue in it. At this time, Wu Lixue was as holy as a dreamy goddess. She was in a dreamy world, which made Yan Juexing dumbfounded. The colorful nebula seemed to feel Wu Lixue's pain, so it separated a wisp and went into her nasal cavity as she breathed. The pain on Wu Lixue's face immediately eased. After a while, the colorful nebula came out again, but it was wrapped in a wisp of wriggling mist like a red nematode. The red mist struggled desperately, as if it wanted to get back into Wu Lixue's nasal cavity. However, the seven-colored nebula did not intend to let it go at all. As soon as it was wrapped up, it immediately formed an unpredictable orbit like the nebula in the night sky, and immediately crushed the red mist into nothingness. At that moment, Wu Lixue's eyes slowly opened. Her eyes were clear and bright. She looked around at her surroundings in a daze. She didn't know what had happened, but the nebula around her was really beautiful. Yan Juexing's body trembled. He found that his control over Wu Lixue seemed to have been removed by an unknown magical power. His mouth was dry and his throat moved. He said, "As expected of the Shuer that I like, you are indeed not comparable to ordinary women. Today, I must have you." Yan Juexing immediately raised his demonic arts to the limit. Who knew that as soon as he flashed over, he saw a colorful nebula like a rock spreading its wings. An aura that made his heart palpitate forced him to retreat subconsciously. Damn it! Yan Juexing looked at the surging colorful nebula fiercely. He couldn't imagine that he would encounter such a strange thing. He actually couldn't get close to Wu Lixue. After the seven-colored nebula collided with Yan Juexing just now, it immediately changed. It surged and transformed into the shape of a big dreamy bird, wrapping Wu Lixue in it. Its feathers fluttered in the air, looking very beautiful. It was exactly the same as the firebird that Yan Juexing saw before. However, it was bigger, and its lifelike majestic aura was far better than the crow just now. The colorful nebula on the bird's head condensed a pair of phoenix eyes that stared coldly at Yan Juexing. An ancient and vigorous aura gradually became dignified. It was an indescribable noble aura. It was like an eternal royal family was looking down on a lowly ant under its feet. Its expression was so disdainful. The fluttering crow that was said to have feet that didn't touch the ground seemed to be stunned by the scene in front of it. Then it seemed to have thought of something and cried out. It flapped its wings on the ground and shouted, "It's the Phoenix Cloud Robe. Sister Shuer, has the Phoenix Cloud Robe to protect her." Chapter 959. Who knew that it would be too happy and fall into a small puddle with an "iya" sound. It really confirmed what it said before. It didn't have a good ending once it landed on the ground. However, it jumped out of the puddle like a drowned rat and shook its feathers. It was still full of energy as it shouted, "Phoenix Cloud Robe, Phoenix Cloud Robe." What was the Phoenix Cloud Robe? Yan Juexing looked suspiciously at the jumping crow. To be honest, he was quite impressed with this crow. It didn't die even after taking a devil punch from him. Looking at the big bird flapping its rainbow nebula wings, Wu Lixue seemed to be flapping its wings to fly to the eternal stars of the universe. "I want to see whether your Phoenix Cloud Robe is stronger, or my devil blade is stronger." Yan Juexing sneered. A cold crescent moon flashed out and floated behind him. It swayed faintly and caused the surrounding air to tremble. A cold blood-red light flowed on the curved blade, and the ancient black magic patterns also exuded an ancient aura, suppressing the crows by the puddle and causing them to shiver in fear, looking at the cold and merciless crescent moon in horror. Yan Juexing pointed with his cold eyes. The crescent moon behind him immediately turned into an arc of light and shot out like a cold lightning. There was no movement at all. It was so sudden that there wasn't even a ripple in the air. In the blink of an eye, it had already slashed at the noble neck of the big rainbow bird. At this moment, A pair of dreamy starry wings folded in front of it and silently blocked the crescent moon. The crescent moon struggled in the nebula. It was as if it had fallen into a ball of cotton, unable to exert its strength. It's only so. Yan Juexing waved his arm and spread his fingers. The crescent moon effortlessly spiraled out of the nebula. The two starry wings were immediately cut into countless glittering spots by the crescent moon. Even the big bird's head was smashed into pieces. Wu Lixue retreated in fear. The scattered rainbow-colored spots gathered back and returned to the big bird in the blink of an eye. Hee. It can't even withstand a single blow. The crescent moon flashed back. Yan Juexing had tested his opponent's limits with a single strike. He clicked his tongue and laughed. Schwer, this phoenix cloud robe might be a good item, but you don't seem to know how to control and use it. Hee. Don't make any more pointless resistance. If I want to kill you, it'll be as easy as flipping my hand. Obediently obey me, and I'll suffer less. Sister Schwer, don't you know how to control the phoenix cloud robe? The crow desperately flew towards Wu Lixue. Wu Lixue shook his head in horror, indicating that he really did not know how to control it. Let me try to help you and see if there's any way. The slowly flying crow suddenly froze in the air. Little Sister Phoenix. Wu Lixue suddenly let out a cry of surprise. She covered her mouth with both hands and looked at the scene in front of her in disbelief. She saw that the black crescent moon's sharp hook had pierced into the crow's abdomen and pierced through it. The crow was hanging on the sharp hook as it slowly lowered its head in shock to look at its abdomen. Sister Schwer, I'm so scared. I can't move. The crow spread its wings, but was unable to fly. It seemed to be abnormally panicked. The crescent moon flashed back, and Yan Juexing indifferently grabbed the crow, hanging on the demonic blade. He looked at it before casually throwing it in front of Wu Lixue. He sneered, Schwer, don't force me to make a move. If you don't obey me, then this crow's fate will be the same as yours. The crescent moon quickly arrived in front of Wu Lixue, as if it was making a final ultimatum. He was feeling a little depressed now. He did not expect that his demonic eye would be unable to control Wu Lixue. If Wu Lixue did not obey him, he would have to use force. The crow laid on the ground weakly and raised its head, saying in a stutter, Sister Schwer, or think of a way to find the bad guy. He has a way to save me. It could not even catch its breath as its head fell to the ground, its eyes slowly closing, and it breathed no more. Little Sister Phoenix. Wu Lixue cried out in grief. She seemed to think of something and she kept muttering, bad guy, find a bad guy to save you. She frantically rummaged through her storage bag. The bad guy that the crow was talking about was none other than Yu Qianqiu. It had always called Yu Qianqiu a bad guy. Wu Lixue suddenly remembered that Yu Qianqiu had given her a few small silver balls and told her how to use them. Yu Qianqiu said that if she wanted to find him, she could use these silver balls to contact him, and he would rush over as soon as possible. She grabbed the few silver balls in her hands and quickly injected her divine sense into them. She held them in front of her chest and prayed with tears streaming down her face. Yu Qianqiu, where are you? Come and save little Sister Phoenix. Come and save Schwer. Yan Juexing did not know what she was holding in her hands and praying crazily. He sneered, Schwer, my patience is limited. In the World Chamber of Commerce in the Immortal Realm, Yu Nantian and Yu Qianqiu were sitting face to face in a small conference room on the 21st floor, discussing something. After listening to all the information that Yu Nantian had inquired about, Yu Qianqiu fell into deep thought. He then knocked on the table with his 5 fingers and said, There is something that you need to pay more attention to. Although we don't have the ability to participate in the ranking conference, we still need to find a way to get a pass to the Netherworld. So you need to pay more attention to whether there are any declining sects that are selling a pass to the Netherworld. We need to buy one in preparation to go to the Netherworld. Yu Nantian could not help but smile bitterly. Now that the Heartless Palace is watching us so closely, I'm afraid that even if we get a pass to the Netherworld, we won't have a chance to go to the Netherworld. It is precisely because of the threat of the Heartless Palace that we need to get this thing as soon as possible. There are 2 reasons. Yu Qianqiu stretched out 2 of his 5 fingers that were knocking on the table and said, "The sects in the immortal realm are constantly sending people into the netherworld. So it is obvious that the netherworld is a place to make a fortune. This is indisputable." Yu Nantian nodded, and then he heard Yu Qianqiu say, "This is the first reason. The second reason is that I want to find my master in the netherworld. This heartless palace is really too troublesome. It binds us in the hallucinatory immortal city, and we can't go out to do things. With our strength, we can't go against it, so I have to ask my master for help. Damn it! Let the old man directly flatten the heartless palace, then everything will be over. I don't want to be long-winded." By Changchun, Yu Nanshan's eyes lit up. That old man was definitely a powerful person of his generation. He was the guy who dared to challenge the emperor of the underworld and shocked the 3 realms. If they really found him, it should be easy to flatten the Heartless Palace. The Heartless Palace could not be more powerful than the emperor of the underworld, right? The most important thing was that if everyone had Bai Changchun as their backer, then many things would be easy to do. His idea was good, but he didn't know that Yu Qianqiu had no confidence in finding Bai Changchun. Even if he did find him, Bai Changchun might not help. This was because the old man probably had no interest in the Heartless Palace. The only thing that could interest him in the immortal realm was probably the immortal emperor medal. In short, the reason why Yu Qianqiu said this was to encourage Yu Nantian, so that he would try his best to find some clues about the Netherworld token as soon as possible. After Yu Nanshan's excitement, he thought of reality and said hesitantly, "This thing might not be easy to get. Every sect wants as many Netherworld tokens as possible. I'm afraid that the tokens in the hands of those declining sects have long been targeted by other sections. I'm afraid that they would be taken away by other sects before we get to buy them. As long as there is news, there will naturally be a way." Yu Qianqiu's finger paused on the table, and he sneered. To think that a small merchant association like the Four Links Chamber of Commerce could think of a way to get the Netherworld token. We are much stronger than the Four Links Chamber of Commerce in the past. There is no reason that they can get it, but we can't. Yu Nantian knew that he and Mu Bing of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce had a grudge, so this matter would probably not be resolved peacefully. He nodded and stood up saying, "Okay, I understand. I will go find out about the Netherworld token." Seeing that Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything, he cupped his hands and left. "Mu Bing, I hope that your son-in-law can protect you for a lifetime. Don't give me a chance to make a move, or you will cry." Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and snorted. Then he seemed to have thought of something, and also stood up to leave the conference room. When he reached the 22nd floor, he saw that Wei Chuanqiu was still sitting cross-legged in front of Bai Suzhen's door. Yu Qianqiu pushed open the door and entered another room. The floor of the room was filled with fist-sized yellow-skinned spider eggs. They were the eggs of the temple rainbow spiders from the God Ruin realm. After Yu Qianqiu closed the door, he carefully walked among them. From time to time, he would pick one up and look at it. Through the light, he could see that the spider inside was already so big. It was constantly moving its 8 claws in the liquid inside the sphere. "It looks like it's not far from hatching. I'm afraid it's not suitable to raise them here. When the time comes, the entire World Chamber of Commerce will be crawling with spiders," Yu Qianqiu muttered as he held the spider eggs in his hand. Finally, after much consideration, he decided to put them in the God Ruin realm. Once these 1,000 or so spider eggs hatched, it would be enough to equip over 1,000 people. Moreover, there was enough food in the God Ruin realm. If he could find a way to speed up the reproduction rate, then everyone in the army of nearly 10,000 would be able to carry a temple rainbow spider. Presumably, the power of battle would be greatly increased. Once he had a plan, he had to carry it out. Just as he was about to transfer all the spider eggs in the room to the God Ruin realm, Yu Qianqiu was suddenly startled. He frowned and said, "It's Shuer. Why is she looking for me? No, she seems to be very agitated. Did something happen?" Yu Qianqiu was shocked and instantly disappeared from the room. "Shuer, it looks like you won't agree no matter what. Good, very good. Maybe using force will have a different taste. You forced me to do this, don't blame me." Yan Juexing let out a cold laugh. Wu Lixue immediately retreated in fright. She hugged the silver balls with both hands and said with a trembling voice, "Yu Qianqiu, you're here." She suddenly exclaimed as she looked behind Yin Juexing. Yin Juexing was startled, and then said with a sneer, "Schwer, don't you think it's too childish of you to play this diversion trick in front of me? I advise you to obey me, lest you suffer more when I use force. At that time, don't blame me for not showing mercy to the fairer sex." Chapter 960. Before coming here, Yu Qianqiu had suspected that something had happened to Wu Lixue. But he never expected that such a thing would happen. There was actually such a bold madman in the world, who dared to make his woman submit to him. Did he really think that it was a joke that he had spent so much effort to monopolize the power of the world? Who was the one with the problem in his head? Yu Qianqiu looked at Wu Lixue, who was shivering in the dreamy nebula, and got furious. He suddenly looked at the back of the person in front of him, and found that the person was wearing clothes that were one size smaller than his body size. His arms and legs were exposed. How could an ordinary person come out to meet others like this? Yu Qianqiu couldn't help feeling a little depressed. It seemed that it was really a crazy guy. Forget it. Killing him could be considered as getting rid of the evil in the world. Which idiot came here to court death? Yu Qianqiu shouted angrily, and was about to kill the person with a palm. There was really someone behind him. Yin Juexing was shocked. He didn't even notice that someone was behind him. He was so scared that his scalp went numb. He suddenly moved away, and the crescent followed him like a shadow to protect him. After dodging, he looked at the person. Yu Qianqiu, Yin Juexing. After the two of them saw each other's appearance, they almost let out a cry of surprise at the same time. Yu Qianqiu didn't even think about why Yin Juexing would appear here. His first reaction was to check Wu Lixue's condition again. Through the dreamy nebula that slightly hindered his vision, he saw that there was a faint palm print on Wu Lixue's tearful face. Naturally, it wasn't Wu Lixue who slapped herself. It was needless to say who did it. Wu Lixue was actually slapped by Yin Juexing. Yu Qianqiu's expression changed abruptly and instantly turned greenish-black. His anger rushed to his brain. At this moment he couldn't wait to destroy the world. He couldn't vent his anger without killing. Yu Qianqiu, he killed Sister Phoenix. Wu Lixue knelt on the ground sobbing, hugging Crow's body in her arms as she sobbed, not saying a word about being beaten up. As soon as Yu Qianqiu arrived, she immediately felt that she had someone to rely on. The dreamy nebula that shrouded her also seemed to feel safe. After hovering for a while, it slowly shrank back into her body. Yu Qianqiu's heart was already riddled with holes because of Wu Lixue's crying. It was not an exaggeration to say that his heart was being cut by a knife. He did not care whether the crow was dead or alive at all. His murderous aura burst out uncontrollably. He pointed his finger at Yin Juexing and said, "Are you still a F***king man? Why do you keep finding women to kill? I'll F***ck your ancestors. Who do you think you are? It's the same here." Yin Juexing waved his hand casually, and the crescent moon appeared in front of him like a ghost, ready to strike. I can wear out iron shoes in fruitless searching, only to find what I'm looking for without even looking for it. I was just thinking about how to lure you out and kill you. I didn't expect you to deliver yourself to me. Very well. Since you're here, don't even think about leaving. The grudges between us are written off today. Hook your mother. Don't even think about leaving today. Yu Qianqiu spat. Seeing that Yin Juexing was not afraid at all after seeing him, he immediately calmed down. Yin Juexing must have something to rely on. After a closer look, he immediately found that Yin Juexing's cultivation had actually increased to the soul formation final stage. He could not help but be shocked by the magic of demonic arts. Not only did a person who was beaten into a pulp and turned into ashes by him revive, his cultivation could also skyrocket. If he was allowed to continue developing, it would be a great disaster. The scene of Yin Juexing being rescued by a ball of mysterious black light surfaced in Yu Qianqiu's mind. That scene made Yu Qianqiu deeply apprehensive. That bastard was the successor of a demon god. What if he was saved by the mysterious black light after he was killed? Did he have to be wary of this bastard every day? Bastard, you can't leave this time. A fierce look flashed across Yu Qianqiu's face. He remembered that a mortal crocodile had once said that the divine sword should be able to deal with that black light. This thought flashed quickly in his mind. Yu Qianqiu had an idea in his mind, and his eyes suddenly focused on the crescent moon floating in the air. He had seen Qiu Wuyuan use it in the 100 Flowers Valley, so he naturally knew what it was. He immediately narrowed his eyes and snorted coldly. Black Moon Pagoda? Great! I was right. The 10,000 demons are quite bold. They actually dared to go against me. Humph. You really deserve it. Black Moon Pagoda? Yan Zhuixing suddenly laughed wildly and waved his hand in high spirits. He said proudly, I might as well let you know when you die. This thing should be called the Demon Blade. It is a divine weapon personally refined by the demon god countless years ago. Countless experts from the 3 realms have died under it. Yu Qianqiu, do you dare? A divine weapon personally refined by the demon god. Yu Qianqiu was slightly surprised, but he immediately swung his arms. A violent wind behind him fluttered his robes, and his entire body burst out with dazzling purple light. 10,000 purple flying swords soared into the sky from his back like a purple dragon soaring into the sky. A valiant prowess that could intimidate one's soul spread out in an earth-shattering manner. Subsequently, the 10,000 purple flying swords rapidly formed a formation with lightning speed and surrounded Yan Zhuixing in the blink of an eye. Let alone the demon god, even the heavenly king can't save you today. Yu Qianqiu revealed a sinister smile and said, Shuer, retreat to a distant place first. Wait for me to kill this bastard that only knows how to bully women. This was the first time he used the purple flame flying swords without any scruples. Furthermore, he released 10,000 at once. It was obvious that Yan Zhuixing had touched Wu Lishua's bottom line, and he wouldn't be able to vent his anger if he didn't kill Wu Lishua. Just as Wu Lishua was hugging the dead crow and flying back while wiping her tears, there were several sharp whistles that echoed from the Wu clan's direction. In a blink of an eye, over a dozen individuals flew over rapidly. Yu Qianqiu and Yan Zhuixing turned their heads to take a look and saw Wu Sihai leading the Wu clan's elders and elders over. There were still people arriving one after another. The various factions' people were also alarmed by the commotion of Yu Qianqiu, releasing the 10,000 swords. They all rushed over to see what was going on. When Wu Sihai and the others saw that it was Yu Qianqiu and Yan Zhuixing, they were astonished. Wu Lishua immediately rushed to her grandfather in tears and recounted how she was bullied. All of you retreat further away. Yu Qianqiu yelled out sternly and took the initiative to make a move. The 10,000 purple flame flying swords immediately turned into 10,000 rays of purple light and shot towards Yan Zhuixing. Yan Zhuixing was shocked by the thunderous power, and he immediately felt that his cultivation was far inferior to Yu Qianqiu's. He immediately opened his 5 fingers toward the demonic blade, and with a roar, he soared into the sky toward the countless purple flying swords that were coming at him. The demonic blade floating in front of him suddenly erupted with a boundless ferocious aura. It spread out in all directions, and suddenly became a dozen meters long. With a whoosh, it hovered above Yan Zhuixing's head. It spun rapidly like an umbrella, opening a path for Yan Zhuixing, who was trying to break out of the encirclement. Dang dang dang. A series of explosions pushed the countless purple fragments in all directions. In the blink of an eye, Yan Zhuixing forcefully broke out of the dense net of swords. The flying swords that missed him hit the ground with a boom. Dust and smoke rose up, and a huge pit was blasted out by the purple flame flying swords. Yu Qianqiu was secretly shocked. It was indeed a godly weapon refined by a demon god. Even the purple flame flying swords couldn't hurt it at all. Instead, it destroyed quite a lot of them. Seeing that the flying swords couldn't do anything to him, Yu Qianqiu spread his arms. Countless purple fragments and flying swords flew towards him, and were all kept into his sleeves. His entire body seemed to have turned into a stream of light, and shot towards Yan Zhuixing, who was in the sky. Since treasures didn't work, he didn't need to rely on treasures. He believed that it wouldn't be a problem for him to deal with Yan Zhuixing with his current cultivation. Yan Zhuixing, who was floating in the inner arc of the crescent moon, spread out his 5 fingers. The crescent moon immediately expanded to 100 meters. It was tangible, and it wasn't just an illusion. A majestic and ferocious aura was emitted like a hazy gray fog. A breathtaking blood glow flowed on the giant crescent moon blade. It was as though there was an invisible giant hand holding a butcher's knife, eyeing the vast land covetously and wanting to slaughter. The crowd, who had been shocked by the aftershock of their battle, turned around and looked at the scene in the sky in shock. They thought to themselves that Yan Juexing indeed had something to rely on, since he dared to challenge Yu Qianqiu again. Within the inner arc of the giant crescent moon, Yan Juexing looked at the charging stream of light without any change in expression. He spread out his 5 fingers again and charged towards Yu Qianqiu fearlessly. The crescent moon of the demonic blade immediately flashed in front of Yan Juexing. Yan Juexing hid in the inner arc of the demonic blade. The hearts of the crowd in the distance immediately jumped to their throats. They saw the giant crescent moon blade slash down from the sky, and the stream of light that Yu Qianqiu had transformed into was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. He overestimated himself and ran to commit suicide. Wu Lixue, who was watching the battle, bit her lips tightly. Her face was pale from nervousness. "Break!" Yu Qianqiu shouted angrily in the sky. He pushed out his palm and faced the demonic blade that was slashing towards him. He used the metal art, intending to shatter it. However, he immediately realized that something was wrong. The demonic blade was enveloped by an invisible power. The metal art couldn't penetrate it at all. There was nothing he could do to it. He was shocked and quickly dodged with a teleportation, narrowly avoiding the giant demonic blade that was slashing towards his head. Boom! The earth trembled violently. The giant demonic blade directly sank into the ground, tearing a huge crack that was thousands of meters long on the spot. Before the smoke and dust could disperse, the light that was hundreds of meters long quickly shot from the ground to the sky. Like a sky-splitting axe, it chased after Yu Qianqiu in the sky. Yu Qianqiu turned into a stream of light and dodged. Then he suddenly disappeared in the sky. Yan Juexing was shocked to see that he had lost his opponent's target. He closed his eyes and pointed between his eyebrows with 2 fingers. The sharp edge of the giant crescent moon suddenly changed direction. Where the sharp edge pointed, it forced Yu Qianqiu to appear in the middle of teleportation. He almost sent himself to the blade. What a nimble speed! Yu Qianqiu took a deep breath. He didn't expect such a huge guy to change so quickly. It was actually faster than his teleportation. He wanted to use the speed of teleportation to instantly approach Yan Juexing and kill him, but the demonic blade easily stopped him. Chapter 961. However, Yu Qianqiu swore to kill him, and naturally wouldn't stop. He immediately vanished from the sky and used instant shift to attack from all directions. However, the devil blade's speed of transformation was simply unbelievably swift, and it protected Yan Juexing at the center as it spun like a ball. Everywhere its edge pointed, it forced Yu Qianqiu to appear from all directions, and he was utterly unable to approach Yan Juexing. Such a situation gave Yu Qianqiu a feeling that he was committing suicide by charging at his opponent's blade. Meanwhile, Yan Juexing was like the axis of a sphere, and was safely in the center. The devil blade would naturally help him resist all external threats. What made Yu Qianqiu most angry was that Yan Juexing was actually hiding in the center with his eyes closed to defend. Yu Qianqiu might know that Yan Juexing was concentrating on controlling the devil blade, but it still infuriated Yu Qianqiu. Yan Juexing was simply condescending. Many of the spectators in the distance looked at each other in dismay. Everyone saw that Yu Qianqiu couldn't do anything to Yan Juexing, and this result was indeed out of everyone's expectations. Many people were even guessing that the divine weapon in Yan Juexing's hand was only used for defense and hadn't displayed its offensive prowess yet. If Yan Juexing was to use the divine weapon to counterattack, would Yu Qianqiu be able to block it? If Yu Qianqiu was defeated, then the entire cultivation world situation would be reversed. Perhaps Yan Juexing would replace Yu Qianqiu's position. Once this thought was born, everyone's expression immediately changed unpredictably. The Wu clansmen, led by Wu Sihai, had an abnormally grave expression. The relationship between the 4 major clans and Yu Qianqiu was well known in the cultivation world. If Yan Juexing won, the four major clans' end would be obvious. Naturally, there were also disciples of the 10,000 demons on Hat Island. When the disciples of the 10,000 demons saw this scene, they looked at each other with a hint of excitement in their eyes. Anyone could tell that the divine weapon in Yan Juexing's hand was the Black Moon Pagoda, in the hands of the previous sect master, Yan Wuchen. Yan Juexing had used the Black Moon Pagoda to challenge Yu Qianqiu. His relationship with the 10,000 demons was self-evident. Once Yan Juexing defeated Yu Qianqiu, then the 10,000 demons. The hearts of the 10,000 demons' disciples couldn't help but beat wildly. But they didn't dare to show the slightest flaw on their faces. After all, no one could guarantee victory until the end of the battle. The few of them were afraid of being seen through by others, so they couldn't help but secretly look around, only to discover that there were already many people glancing at them faintly. Regardless of the final outcome, everyone could see that Yu Qianqiu was indeed worthy of being the world's #1 expert. His cultivation was obviously much higher than Yan Juexing's. Otherwise, Yan Juexing wouldn't have to hide in the crescent moon and not dare to come out to fight. Everyone present only knew that Yu Qianqiu's cultivation was very high, but no one knew that Yu Qianqiu's cultivation had actually broken through to the immortal realm. Even Yan Juexing himself didn't expect that Yu Qianqiu's cultivation would be so much higher than his. At first, he was worried that the Devil Blade wouldn't be able to block Yu Qianqiu, so he focused on controlling it. Now he realized that he had underestimated the power of the Devil Blade. He could completely block his opponent effortlessly, so he immediately heaved a sigh of relief. The two fingers that were pressed together on his eyebrows loosened, and his eyes slowly opened. He looked at Yu Qianqiu, who was facing a wall in all directions, and sneered. Yu Qianqiu, is that all you have? Are you at your wit's end? If that is the case, then it will be my turn to attack. I will let you prepare yourself so that you will be convinced of your defeat and understand who is the true #1 expert in this world. Yan Juexing's tone was undoubtedly insolent, and everyone's heart jumped when they heard it. They all silently thought that Yan Juexing still had an attack that he hadn't revealed yet. Could the battle that would decide the fate of the cultivation world be decided? Everyone in the Wu clan got nervous, as they didn't know if Yu Qianqiu could block Yan Juexing's counterattack. Yu Qianqiu stopped his ineffective attacks and appeared in the sky. Even though he had reached the immortal realm, the continuous instant shifting was extremely tiring for him. Jiang Yi glanced at Wu Lixue, who was nervously grabbing his clothes, and suddenly stared at Yan Juexing. He spoke indifferently. I just wanted to test the Devil Blade's power. I gave you some face, but you still took advantage of me. In my eyes, you are just like a chicken or a dog. You don't even have the qualifications to be my opponent. And you actually don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Truly pathetic and laughable. Fine. I will let you die earlier and reincarnate earlier. I can't be bothered to talk to you. A pale golden radiance flashed by, and a pale golden quaint longsword landed in his hand. Yu Qianqiu raised the longsword in his hand, and wiped the edge of the blade gently while letting out a soft sigh. Even when he was in the immortal world, he had never used this divine sword. He didn't expect that the first time he used it would be against Yan Juexing. If it wasn't for the Devil Blade that was left behind by the demon god in Yan Juexing's hand, Jiang Yi wouldn't use it so easily. Yan Juexing squinted his eyes and took 2 glances at the longsword in Jiang Yi's hand. When he didn't see anything special about it, he immediately sneered and said, "You are the type of person who wants to save face and suffer. If I were you, I would either admit defeat obediently or run for my life. If you are trying to boost your courage by putting on airs, it will be truly pathetic and laughable." As he spoke, he looked at the spectators and continued to boast. "How do you want to die? I will grant your wish." Right now, he was full of ambition and wanted to use this battle to wipe away his previous humiliation, to intimidate the world, and to establish his position as the #1 expert in the world. "You will grant my wish." Yu Qianqiu seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. He pointed the long sword in his hand and sneered. "You are indeed a frog at the bottom of a well who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth." Block my sword first, and then we will see if you are qualified to say such nonsense." With a loud shout, Yu Qianqiu teleported and disappeared again. The crescent blade that was protecting Yan Juexing suddenly pointed in one direction, and forced Yu Qianqiu to reveal himself again. Yan Juexing was just about to ridicule Yu Qianqiu, but before he could say anything, he saw the sword in Yu Qianqiu's hand suddenly erupt with an ancient aura that looked down on the world, and it rushed over like a raging wave. The devil blade that was protecting him immediately let out a rapid buzzing sound to warn him. Yan Juexing had a bad feeling, and his pupils suddenly contracted. He saw the longsword in Yu Qianqiu's hand suddenly become a 100-meter-long longsword. The ancient longsword was covered with a glass-like golden flowing light. "Get lost!" Yu Qianqiu's thunderous roar resounded in the air. A huge longsword swept out and hit the devil blade directly. Boom! A loud sound exploded in the air, and an almost tangible airwave spread rapidly like a shock wave. The devil blade that was shining brilliantly just now couldn't withstand a single blow. It was hit by the huge longsword directly, and became a black dot in the distance. The attack of the godly sword broke the impenetrable defense of the devil blade on the spot. It was completely a heavy blow without any tricks, and it won fair and square. Everyone around gasped. This attack immediately burst the bubble in some people's hearts. There was no need to guess who was stronger and who was weaker. Die! Yu Qianqiu's roar resounded in the air again. In his hand, the long sword was as light as a willow in the wind. It drew a huge golden lotus in the air and wrapped around Yan Juexing. Yan Juexing's insolence had already been replaced by paleness in the face of the majestic huge longsword net. He was immediately scared out of his wits. Even the devil blade couldn't block the opponent, so it was even more impossible for his body to block the attack. However, the only direction he could dodge was behind him, so he teleported to escape without hesitation. However, it seemed to be a bit too late. With Yu Qianqiu's cultivation and speed, coupled with the fact that it had happened so suddenly, and carried a hint of a sneak attack, how could he retreat safely? Pooh! A leg flew in the air with a splash of blood. A fierce look flashed across Yu Qianqiu's face. He was determined not to let his opponent go. With a shake of his arm, the longsword cut off Yan Juexing's leg, and the broad longsword slammed towards Yan Juexing, who was in a panic. The momentum seemed to want to smash Yan Juexing into a meat patty. Devil fist! Yan Juexing, who couldn't escape in time, roared in grief. He desperately punched towards the sky, and directly hit the longsword. Boom! Yan Juexing screamed miserably, and the sound of bones shattering could be heard. One of Yan Juexing's arms was swaying like a piece of meat, and he violently vomited a mouthful of blood. His entire body was slammed towards the ground like a meteor. Bang! The ground shook and a sizable pit appeared. From the sky, one could vaguely see Yan Juexing vomiting a few mouthfuls of blood. It was obvious that he was seriously injured. However, the might of the devil fist couldn't be underestimated. It was actually able to resist the divine sword's attack, and didn't die in one hit. However, how could the divine sword be so easily blocked? It might be as light as a willow catkin in Yu Qianqiu's hand, but it weighed 108,000 kilograms. In addition, when Yu Qianqiu wielded it, it was imaginable how powerful the attack was. The huge change in the blink of an eye caused everyone to tremble with fear. The Wu clansmen were extremely excited, while the disciples of the 10,000 demons were terrified. Die! Yu Qianqiu's desperate cry rang out, and the divine sword in his hand was thrown down from the sky with the might of thunder. It stabbed straight towards Yan Juexing, who was struggling in the deep pit. Right at this moment, a huge black light burst out from a distance and directly collided with the divine sword. It was the devil blade that was knocked away earlier that came back to save its master. Boom! The divine sword was knocked askew, and when it stabbed into the ground, it deviated from the deep pit by a few dozen meters. Yu Qianqiu took a quick glance, and couldn't help but exclaim that the divine weapon refined by the demon god was truly extraordinary. It wasn't damaged by the divine sword's attack, and it was only knocked away. If Yan Juexing's cultivation was a little higher, the might of the sword would be even greater, and the devil blade might be able to fight against the divine sword. The devil blade saved its master, and it immediately won a chance for Yan Juexing to catch his breath. It protected Yan Juexing and flashed out of the pit together. Yan Juexing reached out his claw and directly sucked a leg that fell from the sky. It was the leg that was chopped off by the divine sword. At this moment, how could Yan Juexing not understand that he wasn't a match for Yu Qianqiu? He almost didn't hesitate to crush his severed leg into a blood mist and cried out miserably, "Blood escape! Trying to run!" Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly and suddenly pulled out the giant divine sword that was stabbed into the ground. It instantly shrunk into a flying sword and turned into a golden stream of light in the direction that Yu Qianqiu pointed at. It shot into the expanding blood mist. Ah! There was a miserable scream from inside. Chapter 962. The flying sword flew back to Yu Qianqiu's hand with lightning speed, and the expanding blood mist rapidly collapsed. After all the energy was exhausted, it condensed into a blood scab and fell. The surroundings were empty, and Yan Juexing's figure was nowhere to be seen. He escaped. Yu Qianqiu's eyes widened with rage as he quickly scanned the surroundings. Subsequently, he turned into a stream of light and chased after Yan Juexing. In just a short moment, everyone saw Yu Qianqiu going back and forth in all directions. It was obvious that he was searching for the escaped Yan Juexing. After a long time, a high-speed stream of light scuttled back in front of everyone. Yu Qianqiu appeared with an ashen expression and wasn't in a good mood. Everyone couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. It was needless to say that Yan Juexing had escaped. Wu Sihai asked with a grave expression, "What happened? Did he escape?" He couldn't help but be worried. Everyone had seen Yan Juexing's capability earlier, and if he was to make a comeback, the Wu clan would inevitably suffer a calamity. Yu Qianqiu kept the divine sword in his hand and nodded with a gloomy expression. That blood escape is truly strange. No one was able to detect the direction he escaped to. I wonder how he was injured by the sword earlier. But with the mystical power of his devil art, I don't think he will die. I wonder where he is hiding after he is severely injured. It will be great if we can find him and kill him. Wu Sihai spoke with concern. Yu Qianqiu seemed to have recalled something after hearing the statement. He looked at the faint palm print on Wu Lixue's face and suddenly glared at the 10,000 demons disciples in the crowd. Those disciples were so frightened that they slowly retreated to the back of the crowd. Who knew that Yu Qianqiu would let out a cold snort and clawed at the air with his fingers? Ah! There were miserable screams, and a few bundles of white smoke exploded in the crowd. This action immediately frightened the disciples of the various sects, causing them to flee in panic. A few ferocious dried corpses fell straight down. Before they could even land on the ground, they had already crashed into the old trees in the forest below. Their bodies were already smashed into pieces, and they could not be more dead. Everyone immediately gasped and looked at Yu Qianqiu with lingering fear. It was the first time they had seen such a terrifying method of killing people without leaving a trace. Wu Sihai and the others were no exception, and all of them were extremely shocked. To them, this scene was even more terrifying than the scene of Yan Juexing being heavily injured. Everyone finally remembered that if Yu Qianqiu wanted to kill them, he could do it as easily as lifting his hand. He wouldn't even need to expend any effort. Wu Lixue was so frightened by the terrifying scene that he closed his eyes, not daring to take another look. "Do you like watching a good show?" Yu Qianqiu looked at the crowd coldly and said, "I'm not in a good mood right now. If you don't want to die, scram." Once the statement was out, the various sects' disciples immediately ran away, leaving only the Wu clansmen. Wu Sihai lamented in his heart. The current Yu Qianqiu was no longer the scum of the cultivation world that everyone wanted to beat up. He looked at the empty surroundings and said, "Yu Qianqiu, this isn't the place to talk. Let's go back to the Wu clan first." Among everyone present, he was probably the only one who had the qualifications to order Yu Qianqiu around. It wasn't because of his identity as the Wu clan head, but because he was Wu Lixue's grandfather. However, Yu Qianqiu let out a cold snort and said, "There is no need. I have something to ask you. How did Shui get brought here by Yan Juexing, and the rest of your Wu clan did not know about it?" As he spoke, his merciless gaze swept across the entire Wu clan, causing everyone to feel uneasy. Yu Qianqiu, I wanted to come out on my own. Wu Lixue immediately told the story of how she was tricked by Yan Juexing to come out. She also begged for her sisters who helped her out of kindness. Yu Qianqiu was startled. Once this last spoke, he really couldn't bear to pursue the matter. He then asked, You are saying that Yan Juexing can change into someone else's appearance? Wu Lixue nodded while Yu Qianqiu frowned. No wonder he saw Yan Juexing wearing clothes that were a size smaller than a normal person. So this was the reason. After some consideration, Yu Qianqiu looked at Wu Sihai and the others and said, As long as Yan Juexing isn't dead, Shu'er won't be safe in the Wu clan. I want to bring Shu'er away. As Shu'er's elders, what do you think? A trace of joy flashed across Wu Lixue's face. She looked at the Wu clan members uneasily. She naturally wanted to stay by Yu Qianqiu's side. The Wu clan members looked at each other. Wu Sihai smiled awkwardly and said, As long as Shu'er and her parents agree, the rest is up to you. We naturally won't have any opinions. Although he said that, he knew that since Yu Qianqiu had made a decision, it would be difficult for others to interfere. Hence, he turned around and gave a few instructions to the person behind him. Not long after that person left, he brought Wu Lixue's parents, Wu Huaqian and Zhu Xuanqiu. When they heard that their daughter was almost killed by Yan Juexing, they were terrified. Fortunately, Yu Qianqiu came in time to save her. When they heard that Yu Qianqiu wanted to bring their daughter away for her safety, the couple felt that it should be so. They believed that no one in the Wu clan could protect their daughter from Yan Juexing, and their daughter would only be safer if she followed Yu Qianqiu. However, they were reluctant to part with her, so the couple kept reminding Wu Lixue to take care of herself. After some instructions, the mother-in-law, Zhu Xuanqiu, looked at her son-in-law, Yu Qianqiu. Wu Huaqian knew his wife's temper, so he immediately pulled her back. However, Zhu Xuanqiu broke free and warned Yu Qianqiu coldly. Yu Qianqiu, if my daughter didn't follow you, she wouldn't have been harmed by Yan Juexing. So, I don't care how capable you are. If you dare to mistreat my Shu'er, I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. Do you hear me? As the saying goes, a mother-in-law was very confident in teaching her son-in-law a lesson. It was perfectly justified. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He finally experienced the power of the legendary mother-in-law in his previous life. He didn't even say a word, and didn't even have a chance to explain. She immediately taught him a lesson. She was even scarier than Yan Juexing. Yu Qianqiu's arrogance of being the world's #1 was instantly swept away by his mother-in-law. He bowed awkwardly and said, No, take care. He was trembling with fear, and did not dare to stay any longer. After bowing to the couple, he immediately pulled Wu Lixue, who was bowing to him, and turned into a stream of light, disappearing without a trace. He no longer had the confidence to deal with Yan Juexing. The remaining Wu clan members looked at each other, and the angry Zhu Xuanqiu. They suddenly felt it was a little funny. They didn't expect Zhu Xuanqiu to scare Yu Qianqiu to the point that his face changed color. In the depths of the southern sea purple bamboo forest, Wu Lixue, who had her eyes closed, was pulled by Yu Qianqiu. When she opened her eyes, she saw the unusually beautiful purple bamboo swaying in the wind. The fresh air, which was filled with spiritual qi, and the pieces of purple bamboo leaves that were floating down, simply made one feel relaxed and happy. Wu Lixue asked curiously, This is the legendary southern sea purple bamboo forest? Yu Qianqiu replied with a "N." He saw that she was still holding the dead crow in her arms, so he pulled it over to take a look. When he realized that it was already dead, he casually threw it into the bamboo forest. He then comforted Wu Lixue with a sigh. The crow can be buried in the purple bamboo forest after its death. I believe its spirit will be happy if it knows about this. Wu Lixue stared dumbfoundedly at the crow that was thrown aside like a bone. After being speechless for a while, she hurriedly ran to pick it up. She hugged it in her arms and tears flowed down her cheeks. She choked and said, Sister Phoenix was killed by Yan Juexing because she wanted to save me. Before she died, she said that you can save her. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head. He thought to himself, how could a dead thing be saved? However, he couldn't bear to make Wu Lixue sad again. So he smiled apologetically and said, "All right, I will try my best to think of a way. Give it to me. It's so ugly for a beauty to hold a dead thing in her arms." He walked over and was about to grab the dead crow in her arms again. Who knew that Wu Lixue would be scared by his throwing it away like a bone? She immediately kept it in her storage bag and said cautiously with tears rolling down her face, "I will give it to you when you think of a way to save her." Hee. All right, I will do as you say. Yu Qianqiu was a little gloomy as he pulled her towards Bamboo Lang Paradise. Along the way, this simple-minded girl looked around at the wonders of the purple bamboo forest. Her tears finally dried up, which made Yu Qianqiu let out a sigh of relief. Under the bamboo signboard at the entrance of Bamboo Lang Paradise's courtyard, Nongzhu crossed her arms and looked at the two people walking out from the bamboo forest path. She was obviously alarmed by the conversation between the two people in the bamboo forest. Her expression didn't look good. Behind her stood a smiling Furong and a wide-eyed Ziyi. "Wu Lixue, why are you here?" Ziyi cheered and immediately ran towards the two people. She hugged Wu Lixue. Nongzhu was slightly surprised. She didn't expect Ziyi and Wu Lixue to know each other. Her expression became slightly better. Wu Lixue, who came to this legendary place, was a little nervous. Now that she saw Ziyi, an old friend of the Wu clan, she immediately became happy and lively. The two women chatted continuously. When Furong walked over and intimately hugged Yu Qianqiu's arm, Wu Lixue's cheerful voice immediately stopped. Ziyi was the only one who could not stop chattering. Yu Qianqiu's forehead immediately broke out in cold sweat. He didn't dare to look back. Hee. Nongzhu stood at the entrance of the courtyard and blocked the way with her arms crossed. She sneered and said, "What? You brought another one back? How many more are you going to bring to my place? Damn it! Are you trying to embarrass me on purpose?" Yu Qianqiu immediately coughed and changed the topic very seriously. "Yan Juexing is not dead. I fought with him again before I came here, but he still escaped." The sneer on Nongzhu's face immediately disappeared. She said with a serious expression, "What happened?" Seeing that the topic was successfully changed, Yu Qianqiu immediately told her what happened in detail. Unknowingly, Nongzhu also stepped aside, and they walked into the courtyard. The Black Moon Pagoda in Old Devil Yan's hands is actually a divine weapon, and a devil blade personally made by the devil god. Nongzhu let out a cold breath. After a long time, she came back to her senses and asked in a deep voice, "That guy is a great threat to the human world. What are you going to do?" Chapter 963. Yu Qianqiu looked at Furong and Wu Lixue. He didn't answer the question. "I'm most worried about them. I'm here to bring them back to the immortal world." He was now reflecting on the painful experience. He would rather take the risk of the girls not getting along with him to bring them back. Otherwise, it would be too dangerous for them to stay in the human world. Moreover, Yan Juexing could change his appearance. It was simply impossible to guard against him. If one of the girls fell into his hands, he might not be able to save them in time every time. After all, Yan Juexing was not a fool. If something happened to him, he might regret it for the rest of his life. The girls looked at each other. Nongzhu frowned and said, "The immortal world is not peaceful. The Heartless Palace is eyeing you covetously. Is it convenient to bring them there? There shouldn't be any big problems in the illusionary immortal city. At least it's safer than the human world." Yu Qianqiu glanced at Ziyi and said, "You and Ziyi should go too. I've fought with Yan Juexing before. He does have some tricks up his sleeve, especially the demonic blade in his hand. I'm afraid you're not his opponent now. For safety's sake, let's leave for now." Yes. Ziyi's eyes were sparkling as she nodded to persuade her master. Nongzhu glanced at her angrily and knew what she was thinking. However, when she looked at the purple bamboo forest around her, she hesitated. Obviously, she couldn't let it go. After all, the purple bamboos here were his favorite. Yu Qianqiu knew what she was thinking. He smiled and said, "Aren't the disciples of Southern Ming nearby? Let them take care of it for now. When the time is right, everyone can come back. There's nothing to worry about." Nongzhu nodded and said, "That's all we can do." After a short discussion, they decided to leave immediately without further ado. Nongzhu flew away to look for the disciples of the Southern Ming Empire. Yu Qianqiu, on the other hand, headed straight for the backyard of Zhu Lang Blessed Land. Yu Qianqiu came to the door of a bamboo house that looked like a stilted building. Just as he was hesitating whether he should push the door open or not, the bamboo door opened with a creak. The allure seductress held the door with one hand and looked behind him to make sure there was no one behind him. She leaned against the door gracefully and looked at him with her bright eyes, which made Yu Qianqiu's heart palpitate. He coughed and said, Are you used to living here?" The allure beauty covered her mouth and giggled. She then asked with a smile, "Are you here to see me and say goodbye? Or are you wondering if I'm among the people you're taking away?" Hearing this, Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Obviously, Nongzhu had already woken up from her meditation. The distance between the front and the back of the yard was not big, so it was not difficult for her to overhear the conversation between Yu Qianqiu and Nongzhu. Obviously, she had heard what she should have heard. "Did you hear all of it?" Then he said with a wry smile. "Yan Zhuixing already knew the relationship between you and me. When we were in Lingfang Valley, he used you to threaten me. It's not safe for you to stay in the human world. You'd better leave with me." The allure beauty stretched out her arms and touched her hair. Then she shook her head with a smile and said, "I won't leave." "Why?" Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, "It's not too late for you to come back after I find a way to deal with that guy. Please believe me. I'm just leaving for a while. You can come back later if you want." "Of course I believe you. If I didn't believe you, I wouldn't have abandoned my sect and everything to follow you to the purple bamboo forest in the South Sea. Now I'm alone and have no one to rely on. Who else can I trust except you?" The allure beauty winked at him and said. She really couldn't stand it. Yu Qianqiu turned his head to avoid looking at her face. He made way for her and said, "You go to the front yard and meet with them. I'll go waken you up. We'll leave together later." He thought she had agreed. Unexpectedly, the allure beauty shook her head slowly and said, "You guys go. I won't go. Anyway, I'm alone and have no one to love me. If Yan Zhuixing kills me, then so be it. That way, you won't pity me and I'll be a burden by your side. I don't want to be someone else's burden." Yu Qianqiu looked back and was speechless. What was she talking about? He then said with a wry smile, "Aren't you just saying that out of anger? Did I offend you in some way?" The allure beauty tilted her head and looked at him curiously. She blinked her eyes and said, "Don't you know where you offended me? This woman really knows how to rub my sore spot." Yu Qianqiu felt guilty. Why did he feel that this woman was leading him astray again? So he pretended to be at a loss and shook his head repeatedly. "I really don't know." The allure beauty sneered and said, "Okay, then come in and I'll tell you." She stretched out her jade-like arm and directly grabbed the clothes on Yu Qianqiu's chest. She forcefully pulled him in and closed the door. She then set up a soundproof enchantment in the room. She straightened her chest and pressed Yu Qianqiu step by step. "Why don't you continue to pretend?" She had already thrown caution to the wind. She knew that if she didn't take this opportunity to force Yu Qianqiu to break the window paper, it would be even more difficult in the future. After thinking about it for all these years, she finally understood that the past was in the past. She was still the allure beauty who dared to love and hate. Why should she be bound by invisible constraints and be entangled in the middle of the night when no one was around? So she resolutely decided to be herself. At the same time, she also decided to tear off the hypocritical mask of that lecherous but cowardly guy. Everyone had a clear understanding of the matter. There was no need to face hypocrisy with a conscience. What she liked was what she liked. What did it have to do with others? Of course, it took a lot of courage to make such a decision. It was difficult for her to make up her mind alone. It was someone else who really made her make this decision, and this person was in the bamboo house next door. Especially after hearing the conversation between Yu Qianqiu and Nongzhu, that person immediately came up with an idea to let her threaten Yu Qianqiu at this time. Yanyu, who was sitting cross-legged, slowly opened her eyes after the two people next door entered the room and stopped moving. She smiled bitterly and shook her head. She had seen many things between men and women in the dormant spring house. In this aspect, nothing could be hidden from her eyes. After getting along with the Allure Beauty for a long time, she naturally found out the secret of the Allure Beauty. Otherwise, why did the Allure Beauty go to the cornucopia to find Yu Qianqiu in the dormant spring house? It should be known that the more unruly a woman looked on the surface, once she fell in love with a man, she could really do anything. She could die with just a word. This kind of woman could not afford to be hurt. If it was just the wishful thinking of the Allure Beauty, she would not have fanned the flames. No woman liked her man to have many women. However, she also saw the guilty conscience hidden in the bottom of Yu Qianqiu's heart. If he was open-minded, why would he have a guilty conscience? It was only because of some special reasons that he didn't dare to take even half a step out of line. Finally, there was the scene next door. Yin Yu didn't know whether she had done a good deed, or if she had done something stupid. In fact, she knew in her heart that the reason why she did this was not because she was willing, but because of her inferiority, due to being born in a brothel. In addition, she cared too much about Yu Qianqiu, and was afraid of losing him. She just wanted to please Yu Qianqiu. But why was there a trace of bitterness in her mouth that was difficult to swallow? Yu Qianqiu had never been so afraid before when he saw the Allure Temptress's large breasts pressing against him. He retreated in a panic until he was forced to the wall and had nowhere to retreat. He raised his hand and smiled bitterly. I surrender. I surrender. Stop right there. What do you want? Seeing his trembling appearance, the Allure Beauty was angry and funny at the same time. She bit her red lips and said, In the past, I would go wherever you told me to go, and I would not say anything if you took me. But today, I want a reason. Why do you want me to listen to you like this? With a cold expression, Yu Qianqiu put down his hands and stood up straight. He said indifferently, Don't get the wrong idea. You and I have known each other for a long time. I just don't want Yin Juexing to use you to threaten me. There is no other meaning. It is not what you think at all. These words should be enough to hurt a woman's heart, but the Allure Beauty did not take it seriously. She asked with a smile, What else? Under such pressure, Yu Qianqiu could not pretend anymore. He said with a bitter smile that he also wanted to avoid. The biggest reason is naturally because you are my master's wife. I have the responsibility and obligation to protect your safety. Go to hell. Hearing this, the Allure Beauty flew into a rage. She directly grabbed Yu Qianqiu's lower body with one hand and grabbed his penis. Yu Qianqiu was so shocked that he almost forgot about the pain. His nerves were numb for 3 seconds. Immediately, he was in so much pain that tears almost came out. He shouted, Stinky bitch, quickly give me your hand. You are F***king crazy. Quickly let go. If you don't let go, don't blame me for being rude. There is no good man, especially a perverted man like you who has no guts. You are a good-for-nothing even if you are alive. The Allure Beauty did not loosen her grip on his lower body. Instead, she increased her strength. She gritted her teeth and said, I have already shamelessly sent myself to you. Why are you still pretending? How many days have you known Hao Sansi? When I broke up with Hao Sansi, I don't even know if your grandfather was born. Since when did you become a filial son and disciple to care about my affairs? A useless man like you is useless in his lower body. It is better for me to castrate you myself and cut off my future thoughts. You are crazy, Yu Qianqiu roared. His body suddenly emitted green flames, wanting to force the other party to retreat. However, the Allure Beauty had already thrown caution to the wind. Enduring the unbearable pain, she clenched her teeth and closed her eyes. She shook her head and said, If you do not give me a reason today, I will not let go even if I die. If you have the ability, then kill me. King let go. Ouch, it hurts. It hurts. Yu Qianqiu really wanted to force out the purple flames and burn the devil's claw that was grabbing him. However, he could not bear to do that. Ouch, he gave in and said, Tell me, what kind of reason do you want? Chapter 964. Not long after, a faint red mist rose from Highway's head. It had a slight smell of blood, and it slowly dissipated into the air. Not long after, Highway slowly opened his eyes. When he saw Yu Qianqiu in front of him, he recalled everything that had happened. His forehead was instantly covered in sweat. He turned around and knelt in front of Yu Qianqiu. He said sorrowfully, "This subordinate deserves to die. I have failed Mister's trust. Whether I deserve to die or not, we can talk about it later. Tell me what happened first." Yu Qianqiu said calmly with a fishing rod on his shoulder. In fact, Highway and the others did not know his real secret, so he had nothing to worry about. After Highway told him everything that had happened, Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly. "If that's the case, I'm afraid that Mo Xiaojun, Tian Yi, and Li Qiuxiang's situation are similar to yours." He did not expect Yan Zhuixing to be so vigilant that he could discover Highway and the others. Before coming here, he had only refined the awakening pill to make complete preparations. As for whether or not someone had been controlled by Yan Zhuixing, he could not guarantee it. However, with his methods, Highway was no match for him. After a slight test, he immediately revealed his true colors. It was even more impossible for him to escape from him. This subordinate not only delayed Mister's matter, but also harmed my own brothers. This subordinate deserves to die. Please punish me, Mister. Highway knelt there with a pale face. All right. It's not your fault. It was my own negligence. How could you be a match for Yan Zhuixing? Get up. After calling Highway, who was repeatedly thanking him, to his feet, Yu Qianqiu looked coldly in the direction of the 10,000 demons. He then took out a jade talisman and crushed it. A faint glow quickly dissipated in the air. Not long after, Highway abruptly raised his head and looked to his left and right. He saw streaks of light flying past his head at an extremely fast speed, fanning out in the direction of the 10,000 demons. Just as he was about to say something, Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "Come and meet me at Xiaojuan's place." Seeing Yu Qianqiu's nonchalant expression, Highway immediately understood that the group of experts flying over his head were Yu Qianqiu's men. Alarmed, he cupped his hands and said, "Yes." By the time he raised his head, Yu Qianqiu had already disappeared. His guess was right. These people were indeed Yu Qianqiu's men. They were the 3,000 people that Yu Qianqiu had brought from the hero army that he had trained in the Divine Ruin realm. After Yu Qianqiu gave the order, the 3,000 immortal experts, who had already surrounded the 10,000 demons, immediately moved towards the 10,000 demons. Their purpose was to flatten the 10,000 demons. Perhaps sending such a powerful lineup to deal with the 10,000 demons was making a mountain out of a molehill, but he was here to completely flatten the 10,000 demons. If he sent other forces in the human world, he was afraid that there would inevitably be fish that slipped through the net. Apart from wanting to cut off all of Yan Zhuixing's external help, he also wanted to use the thunderous momentum of quickly raising the myriad demons' palace to intimidate the others. This was to prevent people from not being able to see the situation clearly and secretly assisting Yan Zhuixing. At the same time, the Green Gang and the Hong Gang had already sent out a large number of people, mobilizing and joining forces with various sects to clean up all the disciples of the 10,000 demons in the Chinese cultivation world and search for Yan Zhuixing. Sikong Ju of the World Chamber of Commerce had also used the huge network of the World Chamber of Commerce to pass on Yu Qianqiu's decree to the forces of various countries. Any disciple of the 10,000 demons would be killed without mercy, and Yan Zhuixing would be rewarded with 10 billion high-grade spirit stones if he was found and reported. All the news would also be fed back to Yu Qianqiu at any time through the huge network of the World Chamber of Commerce. What was even more extreme was that because Yu Qianqiu knew that Yan Zhuixing needed the blood of virgins to cultivate the demonic arts, he issued an order to the world that no matter where, once a woman was found to have disappeared or died for no reason, the local forces must immediately investigate the cause of the disappearance or death, or else they would be severely punished. From this, it could be seen that Yu Qianqiu clearly wanted to force Yan Zhuixing to death this time, and he would not stop until he killed him. As a result, many people sighed endlessly. Nowadays, there was absolutely no one else in the whole world who could mobilize such a huge force at any time except for Yu Qianqiu. As expected, Mo Xiaojun and Highway both ran away after being probed by Yu Qianqiu, But he was caught by Yu Qianqiu on the spot with his fishing rod. By the time Highway arrived, Mo Xiaojun, who had woken up after taking the spirit awakening pill, was so scared that he was sweating profusely and begging for forgiveness. Yu Qianqiu did not say much. He looked at the two of them and said, "You two go to the 100 Flowers Valley and meet me." After that, he directly flew in the direction of the 10,000 demons. When he flew to the 10,000 demons, the encirclement had already come to an end. All the buildings of the 10,000 demons had been turned into ruins. Not a single intact building could be found, and there were corpses everywhere. Think about it. Even if all the disciples of the 10,000 demons joined forces, how could they be a match for 3,000 immortal experts? It was a massacre without any ability to fight back. Where the multicolored lights were concentrated, miserable screams could be heard incessantly. Yu Qianqiu quickly flew over, and when he saw the hundreds of people huddled in front of a cave, he said to Zhang Peng, who was commanding the battle, "Stop for a moment." The black-masked Zhang Peng quickly gave the order to stop the attack, and the 3,000 masked immortal experts immediately stopped and surrounded the place. Among the hundreds of people of the 10,000 demons, there were Yan Wuchun and Yan Bugui, the palace master of the 10,000 demons, Bu Yin Xiao, the elders, consecrators, and disciples of the 10,000 demons, as well as Man Hu and his martial brothers. Third brother Xian was also among them. One by one, the battered and exhausted people suddenly realized that their ferocious opponents had stopped attacking. They trembled with fear and felt a little surprised. When they looked around, they immediately noticed that Yu Qianqiu was floating in the air, staring at them coldly. "Yu Qianqiu, the 10,000 demons have no enmity with you. Why did you kill us like this?" The palace master of the 10,000 demons, Bu Yin Xiao, pointed his sword at the sky and roared in anger. Countless disciples of the 10,000 demons had died, and now the entire 10,000 demons was going to end in his hands. How could he not be angry? Yu Qianqiu said indifferently. "Don't tell me you don't know why." Bu Yin Xiao, who was still about to roar, was pulled back by his master, Yan Wuchun. Yan Wuchun, whose clothes were ragged and his face was covered in blood, shook his head and laughed miserably. "I was worried that such a day would come, but I always held on to a trace of hope. I didn't expect this day to come so soon. Unfortunately, he didn't listen to my advice. So much so that I implicated the entire 10,000 demons. I am the sinner of the 10,000 demons." He then pulled his son, Yan Bugui. The father and son looked at each other without saying a word. Only the winner was the king, and the loser was the bandit. The sad wind messed up the blood-stained white hair of the father and son. Yan Wuchun suddenly looked up at the sky and said, "Yu Qianqiu, for the sake of our friendship, let the rest of the 10,000 demons go. Everything was caused by my Yin clan, and it has nothing to do with anyone else. Please let the disciples of the 10,000 demons go. They didn't know anything. As long as you let them go, my father and I are willing to commit suicide in front of you." "Master, don't!" Bu Yin Xiao and Qiu Wuyuan screamed at the same time. The rest of the 10,000 demons looked at the father and son with resentment. It was impossible to say that they didn't hate them, even if Yan Wuchun was the previous sect leader. Corpses were everywhere on the ground, and the sky was clear, with only a few white clouds drifting by. Yu Qianqiu, who was floating in the air, stared at the ground and sneered. "Yan Wuchun, you are also a hero of your generation. Let me ask you, if you were in my shoes, what would you do?" "I understand what you mean." Yan Wuchun laughed miserably. "Indeed, I will not be lenient. I have done things like exterminating an entire sect many times. It seems like karma has come. But this is the mistake that this old man has committed. How can I let the entire palace of myriad devils bear it together? That way, after I die, I won't have the face to face my master. I won't have the face to face the ancestors of the palace of myriad devils." After saying that, he suddenly looked at Yan Bugui and shouted, "Close your eyes." Yan Bugui, whose face was covered in blood, looked at his father in confusion. When he saw the sword in his father's hand, he immediately understood everything. He knelt in front of his father and kowtowed while crying, It is all because of your unfilial son that I caused this disaster, father. Your son's death will not be regretted. In my next life, I will serve you again even if I have to be an ox or a horse. Yen Wuchun was so emotional that his face was trembling. He grabbed Yen Bugui's hair with one hand and raised the sword in the other. Bu Yunxiao and Qiu Wuyuan screamed and knelt down, hugging him. Master, don't. Yen Wuchun was indeed a fierce and ambitious person. He could win and lose. He kicked his two disciples away and shouted, now that things have come to this, don't be stupid. There was a flash of silver light in his hand, and his son's hot blood sprayed on him. Eldest martial brother. Bu Yunxiao and Qiu Wuyuan exclaimed in unison. Yen Wuchun held his sword in one hand, and his son's head in the other. He faced Yu Qianqiu with his eyes wide open and shouted in a sorrowful voice, we will bear the consequences of our mistakes. Yu Qianqiu, please let the rest of the 10,000 demons go. I will repay you in my next life. Then, he threw his son's head away and grabbed his messy hair with one hand. The sword in his other hand flashed, and the hot blood rushed to the sky. Master! The two disciples cried in sorrow. Yen Wuchun didn't fall even after he cut off his own head. He threw his head away forcefully, and his body lost its center of gravity and fell backward into the arms of two disciples. Following the death of the father and son, the resentment that had accumulated in the hearts of the people of the myriad demons' palace also dissipated when the two heads fell to the ground. The Yen father and son had finally given the myriad demons' palace an explanation. The remaining several hundred disciples of the myriad demons' palace all knelt down and kowtowed to Yen Wuchun's headless corpse. Many of them were so moved by Yen Wuchun's act of sacrifice that they choked with sobs. Coupled with the countless corpses that had died tragically all around them, the atmosphere down below became extremely gloomy. Yu Qianqiu silently looked at Yen Wuchun's headless body. After a long time, he squinted his eyes and pointed at third brother Xian. He said to Zhang Peng, he won't die for now. Zhang Peng immediately teleported down and restrained the unprepared third brother Xian. In the blink of an eye, he flashed back into the sky. However, the meaning of Yu Qianqiu's words was very clear. The people below immediately cursed. Qiu Wuyuan hugged his master's headless body and shouted, Yu Qianqiu, you will die a horrible death. Man Hu and his fellow disciples fearlessly rushed towards Yu Qianqiu and shouted in unison, Avenge master! Zhang Peng waved his hand and directly ordered, Kill! Chapter 965. Senior brother Man Hu and the others knew that it was impossible for them to escape from Yu Qianqiu alive. Hence, they decided to self-detonate their dantian and kill Yu Qianqiu to avenge their master Bingqingzi. However, the difference in cultivation between the two sides was too great. Before they could reach the sky, countless rays of light shot towards them and turned them into a rain of blood. Even though the remaining several hundred disciples of the myriad demons' palace were united against a common enemy, it was impossible for them to withstand the attacks of 3,000 immortal experts. In an instant, fierce rays of light blinded their eyes, and miserable screams rang out incessantly. In just a short moment, not a single corpse could be found on the ground. Severed limbs and a bloody mess covered the ground, and the thick smell of blood was suffocating. Following Zhang Peng's order, the 3,000 members of the heroes quickly scattered in all directions to search for survivors. Floating in the air, Yu Qianqiu took out a spirit awakening pill and slapped it into the mouth of third Xian, who was clamped under Zhang Peng's arm. At this moment, a groan came from the pile of corpses. Yu Qianqiu and Zhang Peng looked over in surprise. They didn't expect that someone could survive such a fierce attack. The broken limbs were lifted up, and a bloody man sat up. To be exact, he didn't have the lower half of his body, and there was a big hole in his chest. It was a miracle that he didn't die, but he wasn't far from death. Yu Qianqiu squinted his eyes and recognized Qiu Wuyuan. Qiu Wuyuan was gasping for breath, and it seemed that he could collapse at any time. Fortunately, his arms were still in good condition, and he supported the lower half of his body. After turning his head around, he realized that the corpses of his master and senior martial brother were nowhere to be found. He couldn't help but start crying. He was supposed to be bawling, but the lower half of his body was leaking air. In the end, he cried like a female ghost who had died an unjust death. His voice was hoarse, and it made people panic. His tears could no longer flow. He tried his best to look around, hoping to find a fellow disciple who was still alive. However, how could he find a complete corpse in a pool of blood? Who knew that when he moved a little too much, half of his body would sway, and his arms would clumsily support his back. When he stabilized his body, he saw Yu Qianqiu in the air. Their gazes intertwined and became extremely complicated. The enmity between them had already vanished like smoke in thin air, and the gazes they used to look at each other had returned to the distant past. Yu Qianqiu remembered the difficult days after he entered the cultivation world. He was lucky enough to not die in Ongquangsung. After he escaped from Ongquangsung like a stray dog, he didn't dare to come out and hide in the pillar of the state general's residence. Later, he met Guan Yu, and under Guan Yu's lead, he went to the Hundred Flowers Valley. It was in the Hundred Flowers Valley's Hundred Flowers house that he met a slightly sloppy old man. The two of them were drinking and chatting at the same table. That sloppy old man was Qiu Wuyuan, who was now on the brink of death. That was the first time he met Qiu Wuyuan. After that, the encounters between the two of them appeared before Yu Qianqiu's eyes like smoke. He really couldn't match the bloody man in front of him, who was about to die. Yu Qianqiu almost couldn't remember anything else. These years had passed in a hurry. He had always been busy searching for the supreme path, wanting to break free from the misfortune of his previous life. Many people and matters had been left behind by him one by one. In short, he had killed a lot of people, and his hands were stained with blood. He didn't know if it was because he was really cruel, or because he had always been estranged from the people and things in this world. The first thing that came to Qiu Wuyuan's mind was the scene in the Hundred Flowers house. He met two young men while drinking alone. One of them was the guy who flattered him, Yu Qianqiu in front of him. As for the other one, he didn't seem to have seen him again. After they parted ways, he only had a slight impression of this flattering young man, because he was a little interesting. He didn't even think that he would meet him again, because he was just an insignificant individual cultivator. His status was worlds apart from his. However, after so many years, the rise of this young man could be called a miracle. Many people couldn't stop him even if they wanted to. As a result, he walked step by step to where he was today. He was even strong enough to destroy 10,000 demons with a wave of his hand. If he had known this earlier, he would have killed him to prevent future troubles. But who would have thought that this day would come? Who would pay any attention to an insignificant wandering cultivator? Things are human not. Qiu Wuyuan's throat spat out a few inaudible words. His eyes that were looking at the sky gradually became dull and lifeless. Bang! Zhang Peng slashed out a ray of light and blew him into pieces on the spot. Yu Qianqiu was also startled by this sound and woke up from his memories. Looking at the scene of corpses below him, his Adam's apple moved slightly. When he turned to glance at Zhang Peng, he saw that Third Xian's eyes were unfocused and his face was ashen. It was obvious that he had remembered something. Yu Qianqiu took a deep breath of the air that was filled with the thick smell of blood. He looked at Third Xian and sneered. Third Xian, you've finally woken up. You must have had this dream for a long time. Did you remember anything? Zhang Peng immediately grabbed the back of Third Xian's neck by his clothes and dragged him in front of Yu Qianqiu. Third Xian slowly raised his bloody face and looked at Yu Qianqiu with a bitter expression. Yu Qianqiu, let me go back to Lingfang Valley and find my master to apologize. I will cut my throat in front of my master. You don't have to do it. Lingfang Valley? Your master? Yu Qianqiu laughed as if he had heard a funny joke. He shook his head and said, with your help, Lingfang Valley has long been destroyed by Yin Juexing. In order to save your brothers, your master was humiliated by Yin Juexing. He almost lost his life. As for your brothers, none of them were spared. All of them were killed by Yin Juexing. Today's Lingfang Valley has already become a barren mountain. Your master has also left disheartened. Only the souls of your brothers are lingering here. You're just an animal that helps a tiger do evil. What do you want to go back to see? After hearing this, Third Exile looked at Yu Qianqiu with fear in his eyes. It was as if he had seen a ghost. His chest was heaving up and down, and he was holding his breath. But in the end, he could not hold his breath. He spat out a mouthful of blood and asked in a trembling voice, "Is what you said true? Yan Juexing never abandoned you, and kept you by his side. He trusted you so much. Didn't he tell you about this?" Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly and said, "Everyone in the cultivation world knows about this. If it weren't for our friendship, you would have died by my hands long ago. Do you think there's any point in me lying to you?" Third brother Exile was stunned like a wooden chicken. After struggling for a long time, Yu Qianqiu signaled Zhang Peng to let go and said, "For the sake of your master, I won't kill you. Get lost." "Where's my master? I want to see her," Third Exile asked with a bleak expression. "I think you can forget about that. Your master has finally recovered from her sadness and despair. It would be strange if she didn't get agitated when she sees you." Yu Qianqiu sneered. "I understand." Third brother Exile nodded silently. He took out a jade archive from his storage pouch and wrote something on it. After he was done, he handed it to Yu Qianqiu and said, "I'll have to trouble you to pass this to my master." "That won't be a problem." Yu Qianqiu received the jade archive and skimmed through its contents. He was shocked and shouted, "Old Third Exile!" However, he was too late to stop Old Third Exile. He saw Old Third Exile's chest puff out as a hole appeared where his heart should have been. Finally, blood gushed out of his mouth. It was unclear what Old Third Exile was mumbling, but it was probably some sort of apology. Then, Old Third Exile plummeted to the ground. Yu Qianqiu held the jade archive in his hand as he watched Third brother Exile fall from the sky. He was speechless. Initially, he wanted to incite Third brother Exile to help him be a spy. Based on his understanding of Yan Juexing, he wanted to see if he could find Yan Juexing, who knew that he might have overdone it. Instead of seeking revenge, Yan Juexing felt guilty and committed suicide by exploding his heart meridian. What a mess! Yu Qianqiu looked at the jade archive in his hand. It was filled with words of apology to Lu Yanqing. His reaction was a little slow. "Damn it! You sure have it easy. You committed a bunch of mistakes, and yet you don't know how to repent. You just die." Yu Qianqiu muttered as he looked down. When he raised his head, the 3,000 men had returned. Zhang Peng took a head count and reported. Yu Qianqiu looked around and waved his hand expressionlessly. Everyone disappeared into thin air. However, all that was left were ruins. The corpses in the pools of blood painted a picture of the aftermath of a great battle. As the thick smell of blood spread, it soon attracted a large number of eagles and other birds to circle in the sky. The carnivores hiding deep in the mountains also began to poke their heads out of their caves. Smelling the blood in the air, they became unusually excited and restless. In the sky above the back mountain of the 100 Flowers Valley, Amano and Li Qiuxiang hung their heads in fear behind Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu looked deeply at the magnificent 100 Flowers Palace on the top of the mountain in the distance. He had wanted to bring people to destroy the 100 Flowers Palace in one fell swoop. But when he recalled Qiu Wuyuan's gaze before he died, a string in his heart moved. He remembered his promise to Ma Jiugu of Fuxian Island, that he would take care of Bai Hua Fairy and her daughter. It was also because of this that he did not bring back the 3,000 men from the 10,000 demons to the realm of gods, after sending them back to the 100 Flowers Valley. Otherwise, according to his previous plan, the 100 Flowers Valley would not be able to escape. Even so, he still had to do what he had to do. This time, he would not stop until he killed Yan Juexing. It won't be long before Mo Xiaojun and Highway come to the 100 Flowers Valley. After you meet up, go to the Hong Gang and Qing Gang to assist Hong Qi and Gu Qinyan. When you see them, tell them to spread the news along with the forces of the World Commerce Association. Yu Qianqiu immediately told them about the destruction of the 10,000 demons, especially the tragic scene of Yan Wuchen and Yan Bugui committing suicide. He wanted to see if Yan Juexing would come to seek revenge after hearing about this. Chapter 966. The atmosphere in the 100 Flowers Valley was still the same. The style that had lasted for many years had never changed. However, compared to usual, the atmosphere was a bit different. The reason was naturally because Yan Juexing had caused Yu Qianqiu to order his men to attack the 10,000 demons. Many people were guessing that the next target would be Baihua Palace. While people were whispering in the streets and alleys of the 100 Flowers Valley, there was a sudden explosion in the sky. Even the ground trembled. Everyone looked up in shock, only to see a streak of light forcefully breaking through the defensive formation of the 100 Flowers Valley, directly barging in and floating in the sky. Everyone looked at the newcomer with fear. How could a person who could forcefully break through the defensive formation be ordinary? The surroundings were silent, as if everything had frozen in time. Everyone looked up at the sky without moving. The old people who had lived in the 100 Flowers Valley for a long time recognized Yu Qianqiu. After seeing that the newcomer was Yu Qianqiu, many people began to ponder. They were afraid that the newcomer had ill intentions and was looking for trouble with Baihua Palace. Sure enough, after Yu Qianqiu glanced down, he turned into a streak of light and directly shot towards Baihua Palace. Whispers immediately spread in the 100 Flowers Valley. There were already many people in Baihua Palace who were uneasy because Yan Juexing had offended Yu Qianqiu. The loud sound immediately shocked everyone in the palace. Before they could see who the newcomer was, a streak of light directly broke through the mountain gate and landed in front of Baihua Palace, standing face to face with Baihua Palace mistress, who just happened to come out to see what was going on. Guan Mushu, a long time no see. Yu Qianqiu stared coldly at Baihua Fairy and directly called out her name. It sounded like he had come with ill intentions. Baihua Fairy looked at Yu Qianqiu with a complicated expression. She had naturally heard about how her son was heavily wounded by Yu Qianqiu and had to run away. Facing Yu Qianqiu, who injured her son, she didn't have much resentment. After all, it was her son who took the initiative to cause trouble this time. She only hated herself for not being able to stop her son. Now that things had come to this, it was too late to say anything. Let's do what needs to be done. Baihua Fairy slightly bowed, but didn't say anything. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and looked at the beautiful woman in front of him. Her hair had already turned white. Exhaustion was evident on her face. Obviously, she had not been less worried about Yan Juexing. Yu Qianqiu, what do you want? A figure flashed by. Yan Zixia's eyes were red and swollen as she stood in front of her mother, as if worried that Yu Qianqiu would do something to her mother. From the looks of it, she had been crying. Yu Qianqiu's gaze stopped for a bit at Yan Zixia's face, then said, "Move aside, I have something to talk to your mother about." "No." Yan Zixia protected her mother with all her might and shouted, "My brother's matter has nothing to do with my mother. If you want to kill someone, just kill me." "Ah," Yu Qianqiu coldly snorted. "Baihua Fairy, don't tell me that Yan Juexing didn't come to find you before he started this." He already knew from Li Qiuxiang and Tianyi that Yan Juexing had come, so he couldn't hide it from him even if he wanted to. "Zixia, move aside." Baihua Fairy pulled Yan Zixia away. Her expression returned to normal, then extended her arm towards Yu Qianqiu. "You, torture envoy, please come inside, we can talk inside." With Yu Qianqiu's current status in the cultivation world, it's already a bit inappropriate to call him by his name, so she changed to calling him torture envoy. Yu Qianqiu didn't bother being polite with her, quickly walked past the mother and daughter pair, walking straight into the main hall, and stood there with his hands clasped behind his back. He didn't plan to do anything to Baihua Palace this time, but a warning was unavoidable. Baihua Fairy held her daughter's hand, telling her not to worry, then waved her hand at the panicking crowd outside, signaling them to leave. She then slowly walked behind Yu Qianqiu and asked, "Torture envoy, what brings you here today?" "Guan Mushu, why do you ask when you already know the answer?" As soon as Yu Qianqiu turned around, he stopped talking and looked outside, only to see two figures landing outside the palace gate. Baihua Fairy also turned around to look, then exclaimed in surprise, "Great-grandaunt!" She quickly went over to support the person. Yan Zixia also called out, "Great-grandaunt!" The mother and daughter both supported the person. The clang-clang sound of walking sticks could be heard. The newcomers were none other than Ma Jiugu of Fuxian Island and Ferdinand. With Bai Hua Fairy's support, Ma Jiugu slowly walked over with her crutches. Her face was already showing signs of old age. It seems that her lifespan is almost up. Yu Qianqiu looked at Ferdinand with a questioning gaze. But Ferdinand shook his head with a wry smile and sent his voice back. Jiugu heard that you injured Yan Juexing and gave the order to deal with the 10,000 demons. So she was worried that you would attack Baihua Palace again. So she dragged me here with her. I had no choice. Yu Qianqiu looked at Ma Jiugu, who was slowly walking over, and understood her intentions. She was afraid that he wouldn't be able to protect Baihua Fairy and her daughter. So she dragged her father-in-law here. In fact, the fact that Ferdinand was his father-in-law was only known by the higher-ups of Fuxian Island. Outsiders were strictly forbidden from knowing. So Ma Jiugu was naturally one of those who knew. Ma Jiugu opened her drooping eyelids and laughed. It seems that my old bones came just in time, just in time. She then walked in front of Yu Qianqiu, cupped her hands and bowed. Greetings, torture envoy. Isn't this disgusting? Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched. This old woman's greeting really made him feel uncomfortable. He immediately reached out to support her, then bowed. Greetings, Jiugu. Ma Jiugu immediately nodded and praised. Good, good, good. It seems that I didn't misjudge you. She first put on a hat, then asked. I heard that Torture Envoy has issued a decree to eradicate the 10,000 demons. Unfortunately, I'm old and useless, otherwise, I would definitely follow Torture Envoy's decree and take the lead to eradicate the 10,000 demons. Please forgive me, Torture Envoy. Saying so, she bowed again and apologized. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He had already experienced this old woman's temperament. She was an old woman who hid a needle in a velvet glove, but he couldn't do anything to her. After all, she had helped him several times. Left with no choice, he quickly bowed and supported Ma Jiugu. I dare not. I can order anyone, but I dare not order you. However, Yu Qianqiu was not prepared to let the other party casually manipulate him. The hierarchy of people was a matter of status. He had to protect what he needed to protect. Immediately he said, besides, the matter of the Myriad Demons Palace has already been resolved. I have already sent people to flatten the Myriad Demons Palace. Yan Wuchen, the culprit who connived with Yan Juexing, apologized in public and personally cut off the head of his son Yan Bugui, then committed suicide. The matter of the 10,000 demons is over, so Jiugu doesn't need to worry about it. As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere in the hall suddenly changed. Yu Qianqiu could feel that Ma Jiugu's arm, which he was supporting, slightly trembled. Ferdinand was even more dumbfounded as he looked at him. He didn't expect him to eradicate the #1 demonic sect so quickly. In fact, not much time had passed since the 10,000 demons were eradicated. Yu Qianqiu directly teleported here after finishing the matter over there. So the news didn't have time to spread out. Naturally, no one else knew about it. Yan Bugui is dead. Baihua Fairy's face instantly turned pale, and her body staggered a few steps back. In fact, she and Yan Bugui had always had a good relationship. They were forced to separate because they had no other choice. Now that she heard that her husband was dead, she couldn't take the blow. You killed my father. I'm going to kill you. Yan Zixia suddenly roared crazily after a moment of absent-mindedness. She rushed towards Yu Qianqiu, but before she could touch Yu Qianqiu, she was hit by Ma Jiugu's Demon Slayer staff and fainted on the spot. Chapter 967. Ma Jiugu ignored her, and now was not the time to care about her. There were more important things to deal with. She turned her head to look at the absent-minded Baihua Fairy, then looked at Yu Qianqiu and said with a smile, Torture Envoy, you are indeed swift and decisive. May I ask if you are here because that unfilial son of Mu Shui has caused trouble and wants to implicate Baihua Palace? Jiugu is wise. Yu Qianqiu followed up on her words. Yan Juexing's demonic technique is extremely vicious and has endangered the safety of the entire cultivation world. Before he came out to cause trouble, he came to Baihua Palace and met with Baihua Fairy. But Baihua Fairy concealed it and almost caused a disaster. This is tantamount to becoming the enemy of the entire cultivation world. If he is not punished severely, I'm afraid it will be difficult to convince the public. Ferdinand looked at him speechlessly. However, the winner is king, and the loser is the bandit. The winner is always right, so what can others do? Majugu naturally understood this, but she still nodded in agreement. Torture envoy, I deeply admire you for taking care of the safety of the entire cultivation world. However, it is innate for a mother and son to be connected. How many mothers in the world would harm their own son? Moreover, Mu Shui had only met Yan Juexing once, and did not help him with anything. This meant that Mu Shui still had a clear view of what was right, and what was wrong. She shouldn't be implicated. Don't you think so, torture envoy? Yu Qianqiu looked at this seemingly slow-witted, but actually shrewd old woman in front of him, and felt a bit of admiration for her. She was already past her prime, but she still ran around for the sake of a younger generation. It was truly admirable, but he still insisted. Jugu is right, but if I don't punish him severely, it will be difficult to convince the public. If this matter is spread out and someone else helps Yan Juexing, how can I deal with it? Ma Jugu slowly turned her head to look at the absent-minded Bai Hua fairy, then said, I'm sure that only the few of us here know about this matter. If Torture Lord is willing to spare the mother and daughter, I guarantee that no one else will leak this matter, otherwise, Torture Lord can blame it on this old lady. Saying so, she looked at Ferdinand. Ferdinand can be a witness. Hearing this, Ferdinand smiled bitterly in his heart. She wanted him to speak, so he coughed and looked at Yu Qianqiu and said, I can vouch for the mother and daughter, to ensure that this matter will not be leaked out. Otherwise, I will be held accountable. Ma Jugu nodded with satisfaction. This was exactly what she wanted. Yu Qianqiu's eyes flickered as he looked at the two of them. He remained silent, and appeared to be in a difficult position. He wasn't in a hurry to answer. He just wanted to waste his time here. Ma Jugu didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to still refuse to let go even after Ferdinand had spoken. After thinking for a long time, she frowned and said, I remember that Torture Lord had promised me to protect the mother and daughter. Do you still remember it? Yu Qianqiu snorted in his heart. He was waiting for this sentence. Yan Juexing had used his women to threaten him twice. If he still wanted to protect his mother and sister, wouldn't that make him even more unscrupulous? He immediately said in a deep voice, This is completely different from my promise to protect them. Don't tell me I still have to protect them if they join forces with Yan Juexing to take my life one day? However, since Aunt Gio brought up my original promise to talk about this matter, I will let the mother and daughter go today. It will be as if the original promise was used up by the mother and daughter. From now on, I will have nothing to do with them. Ma Jugu was stunned for a moment, then shook her head. With her shrewdness, she immediately understood. She smiled bitterly and said, So you were waiting for me here. But it's fine. Since I don't have the intention, why should I force it? Saying so, she walked towards the absent-minded Bai Hua fairy with her crutch, held her hand and sighed. Girl, your man is useless, and your son is causing trouble. What's the point of staying here? Come, let's go home. Go home. Where is my home? Broken, scattered. Bai Hua fairy recovered from her trance, and looked at Ma Jugu with tears in her eyes. Girl, don't cry. Go back to supporting Immortal Island. Supporting Immortal Island will always be your home. Live a peaceful life from now on. Let the men fight for the things here. What does it have to do with us women? If we continue to get involved, the ones who will be hurt will always be us women. Ma Jugu turned around and nodded at Ferdinand. She no longer paid attention to Yu Qianqiu, and held Bai Hua fairy's hand as she walked outside. Ferdinand immediately picked up Yan Zixia, who had fainted on the ground. Before leaving, he sent his voice to Yu Qianqiu. How is Furong? Yu Qianqiu didn't hide it from him and replied, Furong is fine. I have brought her to the immortal realm. You don't have to worry. The immortal realm. Ferdinand was shocked. He didn't expect that Yu Qianqiu had reached the point where he could travel between the immortal world and the mortal world. He nodded with relief, and didn't say anything more. Holding Yan Zixia in his arms, he caught up with Ma Jugu, who was outside the palace gate, and flew away together. The huge palace was deserted. Only Yu Qianqiu was left standing alone with his hands behind his back. He was lost in his thoughts. The days when he was with Yan Zixiao on Fuxian Island appeared in front of his eyes. But today, he took a deep breath, got rid of all distracting thoughts, and disappeared. A woman's giggling could be heard from inside Wenqing Palace. A beautiful woman with her beautiful hair tied up in a bun was constantly jumping and dodging, waving the long gauze behind her to tease the little boy who was chasing after her. The little boy had big bright eyes, delicate and cute. He playfully chased after the fluttering gauze. His charmingly naive appearance made the woman chuckle incessantly. "Mother, I caught it, I caught it." The little boy grabbed the fluttering palace gauze and cheered. However, he found that his mother was motionless with her back facing him. He ran over and grabbed his mother's hand, shaking it. "Mother, mother." He raised his head and stared with his big eyes, as if he wanted to call back his mother's attention. However, his mother looked at the door and shouted, "Who are you? How dare you trespass here? Guards, guards." But the strange thing was that after she shouted a few times, not a single guard came in. The surroundings were silent. The little boy turned around and saw an unfamiliar man with a pale face slowly walking in without any expression. He quickly stood in front of his mother and shouted with a childish voice, "Audacious slave, get out of here." Sure enough, dragons give birth to dragons and phoenixes give birth to phoenixes. The environment dictated it. The person who came was none other than Yan Juexing, who had transformed into Shouchen. After he was severely injured by Yu Qianqiu, he hid within the borders of the Dayang Kingdom. Who would have thought that after capturing a few girls to restore his body, it would immediately alarm a lot of cultivators who came to search everywhere. He couldn't understand how a few insignificant mortal girls could cause such a big movement in the cultivation world. After he took the opportunity to capture a person to ask, he found out that Yu Qianqiu had already ordered the entire world, that as long as a woman disappeared or died without reason, it could be Yan Juexing's doing. The local forces must investigate clearly, or else they would be severely punished. After knowing the details, Yan Juexing immediately gnashed his teeth in anger. Yu Qianqiu obviously knew that he needed a woman to heal him after he was injured, so he set up a large net in the whole world to capture him. It was obvious that he didn't want to give him a chance to recover his injuries and cultivation, and he wanted to force him into a hopeless situation. However, even though he was angry, he had already experienced the high cultivation of Yu Qianqiu. He was not his opponent at all. Previously, he never thought that Yu Qianqiu would have something in his hands that could restrain his devil blade. Now that he had not recovered from his serious injuries, it was even more impossible for him to be his opponent. If he was accidentally caught by Yu Qianqiu again, Yu Qianqiu would definitely not allow him to escape easily. It might be the time of his death. After several failures, Yan Juexing dared not take risks easily anymore. He could already imagine where he might go. With Yu Qianqiu's monstrous power, he might have already sent people to wait for him. Once Yu Qianqiu discovered Xiao Chun, Yu Qianqiu would definitely rush over to kill him. From the looks of it, Xiao Chun knew that Yu Qianqiu was determined to kill him. For a moment, he realized that he couldn't find a place in the entire world where he could hide and recuperate. He couldn't help but feel extremely miserable. He realized that he was indeed no different from a stray dog. He was a stray dog that everyone wanted to beat up. However, heaven never bars one's way. He inadvertently thought of the literati of Baiwan country, who he had sex with in the past. At that time, because of a moment of tenderness for the literati, he controlled the cultivators of the imperial palace of Baiwan country to protect her before he left. Even the emperor of Baiwan country was under his control. At that time, it was mainly because he was afraid that if something happened to him, no one would take care of the literati that he had tenderness for. So he didn't expose those people under his control. Thinking of this, he suddenly felt a glimmer of hope. If he trespassed into another country's palace, he might be discovered by the hidden cultivators protecting him. It was not a good idea to take risks in the current situation, but it was different in Baiwan country's palace. Most importantly, there were countless palace maids in the palace. With his control over Baiwan country's palace, He could find some palace maids to restore his body and cultivation. As long as the people in the palace didn't leak it, who would find out? Therefore, this scene happened. Yan Juexing looked at the child in surprise. He heard the child calling his mother from outside. He looked around and saw no other woman except for the young woman in front of him. Could it be that the literati was the child's mother, and the literati was already married? But he felt that it was not right. Without his permission, how could the emperor of Baiwan country let the literati marry someone else? Even if she was married, according to the rules of Baiwan country, how could the palace master still live in the palace? Moreover, there were no signs of other men in the room. Guards! Guards! The literati shouted a few more times, but there was still no movement around. Looking at the cold and unfamiliar man in front of her, she couldn't help but panic. The palace maids and guards outside were all absolutely loyal people that man had left for her. Apart from her, even her brother, the emperor, couldn't order them around. Now that there was no movement, the situation could be imagined. The literati immediately pulled her son behind her to protect him. She looked at the man in horror and asked, "Who are you? Why did you trespass here?" You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.